Okay, welcome everybody to the 11th transmission of the coup d'etat of boxing, a joint venture brought to you by Official Scorecard and myself, Corruption in Boxing. Podcast with a different sort of perspective, different sort of introspection on boxing, where the mission is to not only examine but to calibrate a new method of analyzing boxing from the traditional and the sort of conventional ways in terms of incorporating technologies and video analysis and film studies, and to try and explore some of the dynamics that have not been covered and look at some of the facets that mainstream boxing just tends to overlook and obscure and ignore and ruin the the sheer quality of boxing that is untapped, that the public just simply do not watch, or their minds have been propagated not to watch. So that's what the coup d'etat of boxing is about. And what I'll say is that the the paradise island that a lot of visitors tend to go to for their wonderful beaches, Muay Thai, boxing, all sorts of hookers, whatever your vices are. Thailand has had 19 coup d'etats since 1932. Now, Official Scorecard and myself, we're going to be instigating the country's 20th because it's warranted. So in future, the coup d'etat of boxing will be hosted from our brand new locations, which will be the Royal Palace of Thailand in Bavaria. That's right. The King of Thailand, the almighty deity, Lord King Rama the 10th, doesn't even live in Thailand. He lives in Germany. Greed and corruption just has no boundaries. But you think the German government are bothered about it? Why would they? All of the money gets invested in German bank accounts, and hence it keeps the euro parity strong. So that's a little history of the coup d'etats in Thailand. Official, how you doing, my friend?
Good evening, Corruption. I'm doing great. Well, very nice to be here for a new episode, and big sorry to all of our listeners for not being able to host the show from time to time. But currently, as Corruption, my location has been compromised. I think it's because of Deontay Wilder, and things I said about him on the podcast. So I'm looking for a secure location, but hopefully we are going to find our peace in Bavaria very soon. So there is a possibility of some of of us not being able to host some of the future shows this month, but by the January we are gonna be good. Our studio in Bavaria, in Munich, is is going to be fully operative with all the high tech equipment and ready to go. And big up to L Dog, to Phil Obedo, Saint Brit Sports, and anyone else who's gonna join in later or is gonna listen to the show after the stream finishes.
Yeah, and funny you mentioned Deontay Wilder now. What these people are going to realize is that it is just a massive scam which is going on at the moment. The level of stupidity is just extraordinary. You've got all of the so-called community that is manufacturing videos, but they all know that there's no veracity in any of those concocted allegations that Wilder is spewing, which they've all they've all manipulated and infiltrated into his head. But they know that those allegations are false, but they're still doing it because it's generating publicity, and and it's a financial scam, so they could make money from Wilder's name. And what does Wilder do? He goes on on the air and just completely ruins his reputation because of the level of stupidity. Um, that's boxing for you at the moment. It's so channels which some people I think have got a vested interest in fighters, but they're all profiting on money and super chats. People like um, boxing ego, these deplorable, wretched animals who don't support boxing, know nothing about boxing. They're simply doing it for money. It's just a means to an end. It's just a transition for them. Um, yeah, it's kind of disgusting. But what I want to say is I want to give very quick shout outs. One is to the Teddy Atlas Foundation. Now, we all have our individual opinion of Teddy Atlas. It is what it is. But during this economic turbulence, Teddy's foundation has been uh, donating and distributing a lot of money to a lot of communities that have suffered, a lot of the elderly, making sure that those are, they're provided with basic necessities, food, etc. Uh, that's admirable. And given that he's not had a substantial opportunities in terms of fundraising, given all of these illegal and sort of erroneous lockdown measures, etc. So his foundation has suffered from fundraising. So what I would say to the boxing public is if everybody goes over there and just donates even $1 or whatever, a pound or a euro, um, I think it's an admirable cause. He's redistributing some funds in developed countries as well to start uh, establishing gyms, so fighters from countries that don't have governments who support or don't have sports ministerial offices that allow for indigenous organic sports to flourish. So a lot of these charities are doing some great work because there's so much untapped potential around the world, whether it's sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, etc. So Teddy Atlas Foundation, respect, and if anybody can, pledge some support to them, that'd be fantastic. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know that he was doing that fundraising thing. It's admirable, man. And look, Teddy Atlas. I mean, even me myself, I have mixed feelings about him because one day I'll be like, yeah, Teddy, go on, tell him, you're completely right. The other day I would completely disagree with him, but that aside, really, really admirable what he's doing. So big up to him.
Yeah, because you've got 43 million people have lost their positions, etc. And I'm going to be doing a program on a side channel explaining all about sort of economics and how these problems tie into the coronavirus, given my sort of background in economics, which will shed some massive light. And uh, a lot of these institutions are exacerbating the problem. So a lot of these foundations and charities are doing some great help in trying to get some basic support to these people who have been recklessly pulled out of their positions. They're unable to open their own businesses. Um, there's been no documented science to justify any of this. It's just highly erroneous. Their rights have been subjugated. These people are suffering massively, and it's going to get worse and worse. So it's respect that a boxing charity, and boxing is not perceived in the best light at the moment, that it is a boxing charity that is trying to help the bog standard general public. So that's great to see, because boxing certainly needs its reputation has not been good out in the media, and it doesn't happen when you have nonsensical boxers like Deontay Wilder, that is just tarnishing the name of boxing and undermining its already fragile credibility. It's once that reputational damage has been, once it becomes serious, casual fans flock out of the business, and then boxing continues to suffer and suffer, and it's never going to get back to the heights it had in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even before that, when they were getting 100,000 in stadiums when Jack Dempsey and that were fighting. So it's going to be very hard to replicate that sort of fanaticism, but maybe just a slow sort of build up back. But yeah, let's get into the neat and gritty of the show. Big fight from the United Kingdom yesterday took place at Church House in Westminster. Very famous location after Neville Chamberlain got removed and Winston Churchill got elected to office, when the Germans had pretty much taken out during the Battle of Britain, had taken out a parliament. Church House was used as an auxiliary place of government. So quite a famous sort of iconic place in the United Kingdom, and it hosted a fight yesterday between two up-and-coming prospects, very different characters, massive difference in age. We had Daniel Dubois, prospect under Frank Warren and Queensbury Promotions, who had a number of British and Commonwealth and a couple of other sort of world sanctioning body trinkets, defending all of that up against Joyce from Putney, London. Joyce, very experienced amateur turned professional, only recently Olympic silver medal at Rio. So he did very well. A massive amount of experience at amateur World Series of Boxing, for the whole plethora of tremendous fighters. And sadly, the pedigree that Joyce had brought from his amateurs, and it translated into, once he turned professional, David Hay and Ringstar Promotions, they gave him tough tests straight from the bat. His first professional fight was against Ian Lewison, a fighter who world boxing may not know, but he was a fighter with a tremendous amount of natural talent, but due to his own ill discipline, it never flourished. Ian Lewison self-admittedly said that he was more busy in playing Xbox rather than boxing, so he wasn't interested in training, etc. Just really relied on his natural talent to get him through boxing. But we all know that only takes you to a certain length in boxing. If you don't put in the hard work, then you're going to be exposed very quickly. And but Lewison had some reasonable, performances. Took place in prize fighter, etc. Had a bit of power, but Joyce fought him. He's fought. He's been in with ex-world champions in Bermain Stabern. Also fought Brian Jennings, who challenged Vladimir Klitschko. So, in quite a short professional career, he's been put in with some good opposition. 11 knockouts in sort of 15 fights. Power has always been deceptive with him because of the volume of punches he throws, but he's 6'6" heavyweight, very good athlete, former sort of rugby player. It's a sort of fight that does backflips, etc. So the agility is just plainly obvious. Fighter who relies on good volume, not loading up on his punches, has a tremendous chin, as I mentioned, and the chin has been chin checked by a lot of big punches. Jalalev, Ditchko, all of these Tony Yokers, Hrgovic, he's fought them all. Alexander Usyk, World Series of Boxing, so only been knocked out once, I believe, as an amateur. So and that was when he was, very inexperienced and young. Um, and conversely, Daniel Dubois fast-tracked, but it's been highly superficial, fighting against absolutely nobody's, Ebenezer Tete and my next door neighbor, Schneiders from Holland, who, trust me, works at a bakery Monday to Friday. I don't know what the hell he's doing boxing. Um, Yamamoto has been fighting and knocking out these cats in next to no time. So we've never seen any real development in his boxing talent. The one test he had against former world title challenger Kevin Johnson, who was very washed up, but Johnson didn't throw a lot of punches, very offbeat style, awkward style, made it difficult for Dubois, but Dubois couldn't really decipher and crack Kevin Johnson, and certainly didn't look very good in the fight. So that clearly showed if Dubois had an opponent who could certainly absorb some punches, roll and ride some punches, then it would make it difficult. And Joe Joyce embodied that, but he also had boxing ability. He had work rate, very good endurance, and sadly, all of those facets were just completely overlooked by the mainstream boxing public and the sports books, who took an absolute hammering. They must have, because the odds that they were convening for Joe Joyce getting a victory was just ridiculous. So a lot of the smart and shrewd boxing analysts, all on YouTube, etc., a lot of them, felt that Joe Joyce had a tremendous chance of winning the fight, and if he was going to win the fight, then it would have to be by knockout, either by taking Dubois into hot water, a Frank Bruno 2.0 muscle bound, tire him out, and then try and break him down and knock him out. It seemed like a logical strategy, and Joe Joyce, credit to him, he didn't have his main trainer Ishmael Salis under some unsubstantiated failed COVID test, which I'm still looking into, but that sounds like a Frank Warren undermining policy to me. But Joyce, remained composed with his, auxiliary trainers. He developed a strategy of maintaining distance and range. And for a fighter who's been synonymous with just using his head as a punch bag, he showed a lot better defense in this fight. Dubois, quite an explosive sort of puncher, but he doesn't cut the distance, doesn't step into the punches. He just sort of explodes with his punches. Reasonably good jab, good right hand. Joe Joyce was able to maintain distance and range, use peppering jabs, keep the fight at long range, force Dubois to come in a little bit more. And then when Dubois would fall short with the punches, Joe just did the conventional fundamentals were all right in terms of circling, pivoting off to the right, creating that angle. So a fighter who's just pretty much operating in a straight line is going to have difficulties. So Joe was able to use that simple pivot and then hence, neutralize the sting of the punches by his guard, sometimes his shoulder, taking his head off the line as well. So the full velocity and impact of the punches wouldn't be realized. So he did a reasonably good job. Pretty simplified strategy. A constant nuisance of a jab, and you could see Dubois' left eye. The visceral damage was as clear as early as the second round, and that just prompted Joe to just continue peppering him with the jab, doubling, tripling up with the jab. And it's quite weird, I mean, if you go back and look at the statistics, I think Joe Joyce threw the least amount of power punches in this fight than any other fight. He didn't have to use his right hand that much, and sometimes the punch technique is not that high as well. he tends to push a little bit with the jab and the straight right hand, so it kind of looks a little bit cumbersome and ugly. But there's a very good IQ in terms of what he's doing. Um, he was pretty much in cruise control in the fight as well. He didn't have to open up with that many combinations. He mentioned that maybe the risk of it against somebody who's maybe a little bit more heavy-handed was too risky, and he didn't have to uh, bridge that gap too much. He could just control it from distance, smother Dubois a little bit when the fight came into sort of close range. Dubois showed some good ability at times. You know, his jab, he tried to get underneath Joe's jab and fire his own jab, and he was landing his punches. He was landing the right hand as well. But Joe's got a very good chin, and we know that everybody has pretty much underestimated Joyce coming into this fight. And Dubois' corner did also I think they did a terrible job. Not only were they shocked by Joe's punch resistance and him actually controlling the fight, but they never conveyed any instructions to make any sort of pragmatic adjustments. For example, if Joe is going to be pivoting off to his right, then they should have been relaying to Dubois and saying, instead of loading up with your right hand, why don't you feint with the overhand right? You know Joey's going to then try and step out of range and create that angle. So if you feint with the right hand and you fire a left hook or a check left hook, even if you don't land the left hook, then you're at least cutting off the ring and stopping him pivoting off to the right. But they never conveyed any such instructions. They were trying to use more of a psychological embarrassing him and trying to almost convey to him that, I mean, do you really want to retain these titles? Just some sort of ridiculous motivational speech. He's a young man. He's been taken into deep waters. Maybe there's a degree of panicking, his eyes swelling up. Give him some wise information, but none of that whatsoever. And that is what happens when you're just fighting bum after bum after bum. You've got no adversity. You're not having to learn from any sort of period of difficulties where you've had to implement adjustments before. So therefore, it allows you, to have that ability in sort of going forward. You're just knocking out these cats, bringing them up from cruiserweight, or they're washed up, or they've got padded records. It doesn't do these fighters who don't have a tremendous amount of amateur schooling like Joyce in the Olympics, etc. So if these fighters are going to turn over professionally very quickly at the sort of tender age of 19, 20, 21, 22, it doesn't matter if they're sparring with Anthony Joshua or whatever. That's a completely different animal from how the matchmaking is. And the matchmaking from Frank Warren has been terrible. And therefore, this massive gambling, putting them in with the role with Joyce has backfired. And we saw what happened. Joyce capitulated to a certain extent. Now, I'm not sure about the eye, whether he suffered a broken eye socket. There is some indication. I haven't checked any medical reports whatsoever, but if that is the case and he's checked out of the fight, then it is what it is, I guess. There's going to be, of course, that's going to be a polarizing. People like to see fighters going out on their shield, etc. But I'm personally one. If your eye socket is broken, you want to preserve your eyesight. I've got no problem with that. He's a 22-year-old fighter. He's probably not even had a family yet. He has aspirations of having that down the line. His boxing career may end any time. So if he wants to make sure that his faculties remain after boxing, I don't have a problem with that at all. So many fighters have retired recently with broken eye sockets, so that injury is not always homogeneous going across the board. Some people can recover from it. It depends on the degree of breakage, whether it's broken in multiple places, and sometimes surgery is unsuccessful in that as well. So we'll have to wait and find out a little bit more information about that. But Joyce moves on, gets the victory by knockout in the 10th round. Wonderful day for myself and even official. We both had predicted Joyce to win
Oh,
the
yeah.
fight by stoppage. Great odds, good return, and what I don't want to hear now is I want all talk of Joyce and Alexander Usyk. I want to cut that shit out. You know, I don't want these roadblocks keep being levied against Alexander Usyk. There's only one fight for Alexander Usyk, and that's Anthony Joshua. I don't want to hear any other bullshit about that. So yeah, official.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. So fantastic, fantastic outcome of the fight. Well, yeah, we were basically saying the same thing. Um, Joyce's uh, general ring IQ and skills being underrated. Now, at the same time, I still don't want to overrate him because, look, people saying that he's very slow. I I do agree with it. I do think that he's pushing his punches, etc., and that um, sharper opponents would be able to exploit it, and it would be dangerous for him against especially some of the very top level fighters at the heavyweight division. But man, people were really trashing him, really, really going too hard on him, and I don't know why. Because look, his boxing is very nice, very underrated. I've been speaking with you before the fight. I wasn't really able to do a film study on neither of them. I was watching a couple of their fights before, etc. But what I saw about Joyce in the past is that he's always moving after punching. I mean, after punching, like in this fight against Dubois, he was um, moving his head off the line over his right foot, rear foot, outside of Dubois' left hand. So with his dimensions, he was creating the additional distance, which was already a big enough a big enough distance because of his size. His size, his corpulence, his stature is already helping him, to evade, making him hard to land on him. Because just like you said, look, even when he throws a jab, he's hiding his head behind that shoulder, and being taller than his opponent, it's not that easy to get hit. So yeah, he's in my opinion, he does telegraph his punches and he's pushing them. There's no explosiveness, but at the same time, the result he had in this fight tells you that he clearly punches hard. And look, having a man that big and that tall, he doesn't need to throw his punches with full force to do the damage, because his punches are already hard, and if they are precise, they are making the damage and doing the damage. And we all saw what happened the last night. Now Dubois, like, look, you said on BDA the last night, you were completely right. He was trying to throw his right hand, but the way he was throwing it from too far away, he was not able to throw, let's say, an overhand right over his shoulder, because, like I'm saying, Joyce is already tall enough and moving that head off the line. So it was very hard for him to find home for that right hand. Now, I saw a couple of things from Dubois that I liked, but they were completely ineffective, like pivoting, trying to counter Joyce's jab with the right hand, and then pivot outside of the jabbing hand. But by the time Dubois was making that pivot, Joyce was already too far out of his reach, you know. And I'm especially glad because now, as I often talk about the American boxing establishment, well, it's the same thing with the UK establishment. Boxing is corrupt in all the countries where it's taking place. So in the UK too, I couldn't stand the commentary team. You know, the commentators from BT. They're both whack. Doesn't matter if it's BT or Sky Sports. They're terrible. But the way they were sucking off on Dubois, it was, oh, I, I just wasn't able, you know. I could not stand it, man. They were riding his nuts so hard. They were blatantly lying to the viewers. Joyce having some of his best rounds, and they were like, "Oh, that's a clear round for Dubois." It's a nonsense, man, nonsense. I remember hearing that a couple of times after Joyce having some really good rounds, really punishing his left eye with a jab and outlanding him by much. And they were still saying that Dubois was winning those rounds. By the way, corruption. Are you aware of the scorecards?
No. Somebody sent a message that maybe Joyce was ahead on one of them, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, right. I'm going to read you the scorecards now. So after the first 9 rounds, Victor Lowlin, sorry for the pronunciation,
The worst
had
fat piece of shit on the planet, aka.
but hold on, corruption, you're going to be surprised. He scored it 87 to 84 for Joyce. Then Mark Lyson had it 86 to 85 for Dubois, and then John Layton had it 88 to 83 for Dubois. It's completely disgusting, man. Because me personally, I told you, by the time the 10th round started, I had Dubois winning only 3 rounds, and I could see even people giving him only 2 rounds. Now, I know some other people had it closer, you know, had it 5 to 4, etc. I can see it, but I disagree. Even with those scorecards, I would disagree. I only gave Dubois only 3 rounds. Couldn't give him more than that. But yeah, I mean, look, Joyce, I think, like I said, I hate to repeat myself. I think him pushing his punches can be dangerous against the highest level of opposition.
Yes.
But yeah, but Dubois was nowhere near able to exploit it.
And the other thing that Joe Joyce does, which is also worrying, is the way he bends down and hits the lead hand to the pit of the stomach. Because he's not blessed with tremendous speed, that can be so telegraphed. And if there was a fighter who had the reflexes and the reactions, they would take his head off with an uppercut.
Oh yeah, definitely. But hold on, I wanted to say something, but I just lost it. Sorry, hold on. I mean, go on. I'll try to remember what I wanted to. Oh yeah. Oh, man. Sorry, I'm going crazy. Please go on. I'll try. I'll try my best to remember what I wanted to mention.
Okay. Yeah, there was no doubt that Daniel Dubois would be, the protected and insulated fighter had the fight gone to the scorecards, and it was looking in the 10th round that if the eye had, deteriorated sufficiently, then um, the fight may have been stopped, or the corner may have stopped it, or the referee would have looked at a closed eye. And we've seen a lot of high-profile incidents recently with a closed eye, with Joshua Franco, and with the eye damage, Tyson Fury as well. And the way the promoters who are backing these fighters, who actually sign directly to the networks, in which they can exert their power of influence in either getting a fight stopped, even before 4 rounds have been completed, dependent on whether a punch caused the injury or not. So Frank Warren would have, no doubt, the fight would have probably have gone to the cards, and you've just emphasized that two of the judges had the fight in favor of Dubois, and one of them, Latham, pretty very wide as well, which is extraordinary. But that's what we've seen over the years with Frank Warren cards and his fighters. Billy Joe had a little bit of that hometown decision against Akhimov when he was completely out of sorts in the fight. Not only that, they delayed the fight by a week because they didn't want Billy Joe Saunders losing the fight on the scales when the fight was originally scheduled to take place in Wales. So they gave Billy Joe an extra week to get the black bin bags around him so he can go running and lose the extra 4 pounds, just to make weight, so that they got a chance of robbing Akimov so he doesn't lose the belt on the scales, and they can rob him on the cards. So they've got all of their contingencies in place. This is one of the most disgusting sports, period, on the planet. So not sure what happens with Joe Joyce now. I'm not even sure if David Haye is still promoting this cat, or we're still with Ringstar Promotions or what. There's talk about Eddie Hearn signing him, but I don't know about that. The way Eddie Hearn, we've seen it. I've illustrated it with Usyk. Eddie Hearn is not positive for Alexander Usyk. He's completely the opposite. He doesn't want Usyk as the heavyweight champion, and I've explained why. I don't think that's subjective or incorrect. I think what I'm saying is absolutely right. And now they're just putting up roadblocks after roadblocks, and if Eddie Hearn signs him, then Eddie Hearn will be, Usyk still needs, he's not ready for AJ yet. I think Joe Joyce, a rematch of their World Series of Boxing contest, which was fantastic. The snake oil salesman to be out, create yet another roadblock for Usyk, which is fucking ludicrous now. I'm gonna try and contact Usyk personally. I'm not official. I'll have to give me some help on Twitter or Instagram or whatever the fuck he's on. I've got no idea.
Sure.
And I'm gonna get a message out to him and saying, look, you need to cut your ties with this cocksucker ASAP. You're not going to get any title shot. They're going to try and screw you with a Dillian Whyte or a Povetkin, whatever. Remain independent with K2 Promotions, but I don't know. Official, what do you see next for Dubois? Because I think what he needs to do first of all is to get rid of the Philip Bowen or whoever his corner are, because they're clearly neolithically incompetent. And that fight, because it's interesting, they never focused on Joe Joyce's corner once, so we never got instructions from his corner. But it was only tailored on Dubois, so we heard pretty much all of the rubbish that was emanating from their mouth. And it's interesting, with no crowd, we could quite clearly gauge everything, and therefore we can decide whether the instructions were correct or not. And so he needs to get rid of him, but whether he's knowledgeable enough and mature enough to actually make that change, I don't know. I sincerely doubt it. But that's what he needs to do. And Frank Warren needs to start giving him proper matchups. Needs to start building his resume with live bodies, guys who got some punch resistance, who can fight back in the ring. guys who are natural heavyweights, who are seasoned heavyweights, because power is relative, as I've always said. You know, if L Dog goes into the ring, I'm sure L Dog can knock out 17 girls or 17 adolescents. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, but somebody who's got a bit of a chin is a completely different story. So yeah, you've got to get him out of his comfort zone. He definitely is heavy-handed, but it's not just all about a right hand. You got to develop his boxing ability, man. He's got limited punch variety. His stamina is not the best. He's too muscular. He's depleting all of his oxygen reserves. So if a fighter is able to slips, move laterally, parry the punches, Dubois is going to punch himself out. Then he's a sitting target. Then he can only fight in short bursts, etc. So, what's that Doc said? Yeah, you can, man. I co-sign that as well. Knock out Triple G. You could knock out Triple D, definitely. With that bad eye. Not sure about Triple G, but yeah, official. Any thoughts on what the hell he needs to do to try and resurrect his very tender young career? There's a lot of time they can do it, but it's about making those correct and logical steps.
Yeah, right. So okay, look, first of all, unfortunately or fortunately for me, depends on how you look at it.
Yep.
I turned the sound off because of the commentators, so I was not able to hear what his corner was saying. All I heard about what they were telling him was from your mouth. So yeah, I was not able to hear them saying all that, but if they were telling him, if they were behaving in the corner the way they you're telling me that they were behaving, for it sucks for him for sure. So the first best move would be to change them, to find a new trainer, definitely. Now, of course, look, it's not rocket science. I mean, Joyce was clearly levels above him. He can maybe go in the ring with less, way less skilled opponents, but some of them who have best good chins, you know, so he can practice, you know, things. I mean, try different things, but just put him with someone who's resistant enough, who's not a bum who's gonna fold at the first right hand that Dubois throws. And he's young enough, and I saw that, like I told you, he's trying to do. He tried a couple of things, but his stamina was so depleted. He was trying it rarely, so he was not able to do anything serious against Joyce. And plus, he landed a couple of flush right hands, but too far in between. So Joyce, one more time, even in this fight, proved his chin, because yeah, Dubois is a heavy puncher, but I want to see him against someone who's resistant enough, who's not going to fold the first right hand from Dubois, or the left hook lands. It would be a good beginning, but even more important than that would be to change his corner, man, because from judging from what you're telling me, they were telling him in between the rounds, it was terrible. But yeah, I finally remember what I wanted to say. Now, people, some of the boxing fans are complaining because of the way that Jojo is boxed, using only his jab. Look, first of all, I don't think that this fight was very exciting. It was not exciting to me. Now, I thought it had the possibility to be to possibly be an interesting fight. I don't think it was the case, but Joe Joyce was doing just what he was supposed to do. Now you have, they're just boxing that way. They don't want to to go to use all their arsenal. And Joyce is one of them. He's kind of like, now hear me out. I'm not saying he's anywhere on Lomachenko's level skill wise, but just like you were talking about Loma, having Lomachenko clearly having fighting in, how do you say, all of his fights, let's say, have so-called a few chapters. In first one, he's treating the opponent, etc., and then he's starting to, you know, to oh man, I lost my words. He's going to turn up his aggression, his activity levels, etc. And in the beginning, he won't be using his all of his punches. So Joyce kind of does the same thing, and Crawford is one of them as well. Now, I'm not saying that Joyce is necessarily on their level, but he was doing the same thing. Look, he was outboxing him with his jab only, and his jab was hard enough to do the damage as we were all able to see the last night. But I also saw him starting to add that right hand from the ninth round, I think. Now maybe it was too late. I don't know. It depends on who do you ask. But I had no problem. Look, I do think that fight was not extremely exciting, in my opinion, far away from that. But he was doing what he was supposed to do, and I mean, but on the other hand, I have no problem with him only using his jab for so many rounds, because it was clearly doing the damage. And I mean, even in the early rounds, he was going to the body with the jab, but especially in the second half of the fight, he started adding his jab to the body, throwing it more frequently. And by the eighth round, I'd say he started adding the right hand over the top.
Yeah, official. That's my point. If you compare Joe Joyce's performance in this fight and compare it against his previous opponents, Bermain Stavern or Brian Jennings, some of the high profile, he did all three of those fights are actually different. Um, Joyce was using more power punches, more combination, more work rate in those fights. So he's calculated the risk and how to mitigate the risk, and he gave indications to that post fight. So
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. So he didn't have to uncork his right hand or take as much risk in getting countered with Dubois' sort of short explosive right hand. So you're absolutely right. If his jab is landing and Dubois is not making defensive adjustments to try and prevent that, or using his feet or extra head movement, he started to do a little bit of head movement because, to be fair, his corner. One thing about his corner, they were remonstrating that he's getting hit with the jab too much. You've got to start moving your head, and in some of the middle rounds, he was getting a little bit lower and trying to move his head. So that's the only positive bit of advice that I noticed from his corner, but insufficient. And shout out to the coup d'état of boxing's heavyweight matchmaker El Dog, who's come up with some great names as well in terms
Big
of
up.
what they can do. Marius Wack and Rice and Sokolowski, some good opponents to help in that sort of maturation going forward. So yeah, I agree with that. Wack has got a great chin, pretty much of a punching bag now, but people like Sokolowski, who's very underrated, got some power in his hands as well. Yeah, that'll be a good contest. But Marius Wack comes to fight, he gave Dillian White a hell of a fight. I thought that towards the end of the fight, it was Marius Wack who was actually dominating Dillian White, pushing him back on the back foot and landing. He looked the more confident fighter towards the end. And,
Oh yeah,
Dillian started blaming his conditioning, all of those excuses we hear under the table. But, Marius, he's got a chin and a half.
corruption. By the way,
Yeah.
one more point I wanted to make about Joe Joyce's strategy in this fight, and it's not on about this fight only, but about those fighters like him, who are very, very careful strategically and are really going in the ring with a clear game plan. I mean, let's say that he started uncorking his right hand more often and much more earlier. I mean, just like we have stated, if the left jab was landing frequently enough and punishing his opponent, yeah, you can throw the right hand, and be even more effective offensively. But at the same time, it puts you at risk of your opponent being giving away another one more weapon from your arsenal to your
Mm.
opponent, and him getting accustomed to it. So boxing, it doesn't need to be that complicated. So if the jab is landing frequently and you think you are either doing the damage to enough to stop that opponent later, or to you're doing enough with the jab to win the rounds, no need to give him one more of your weapons, because if you do it very early, oh, unless, of course, unless he's clearly hurt and out of his feet and ready to be taken out, because if you give it away too early, he's gonna be able to possibly able to adjust to it, and then instead of if you're able to, I mean, to win 9 rounds with one jab, you're still winning them. Doesn't need to you don't need to add another weapon to it. Instead, you save it for later. If your opponent is able to adjust to your jab, which he was not able to do, then you add in the right hand, or if you want to,
Yes, absolutely right. And you were right. Joe Joyce was progressively increasing the frequency of his right hand because he must have sensed as well that they were going to try and rob him on the cards. And his idea was, take the sting out of his punches, frustrate him, keep peppering him, break him down, frustrate him, get him tired, deplete all of his energy, get him off balance, etc., and then start unwinding because he's a conditioned 12 round athlete. He can go that distance, and then start using your right hand and take the motherfucker out if you can, 10th, 11th, 12th, and it worked to a T. But given his eye, etc. So maybe it sort of happened sort of spontaneously, but um, uh, I thought it was a you know well calibrated strategy. Just too much criticism levied on Joyce. I think it's ridiculous. Give this guy a chance. He deserves some fights now. Um, he doesn't need that much more seasoning and conditioning. I think he's got good IQ, good intelligence. He knows that sort of style is not going to win him any sort of championship belts. He's going to have to throw more power punches. There's too many shrewd operators out there who's going to be able to counter his jab if that is what he's just predominantly throwing. But I think Joe Joyce is aware of that, and that's the key. He's not naive. He knows it's going to have to mix up his game. Then again, throw a lot more punches, start sitting down on his punches as well. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of speculation about his promotional status, etc. So, yeah, that's pretty much me finished on Joe Joyce Dubois. Official, anything else, or should we move on to one of the other fights?
No, I don't think so. I think I said everything I wanted to say. That in fact there was not too much to say about the fight in the first place, because the way it went on, it was pretty simple. Even the boxing, the strategy that Joyce was using was simple, so, and obvious. So there's nothing more to say about it, uh, except congrats to Joyce, and fuck you all the TV commentators.
Actually, L Dog, I mean that's a good proposition, but I think that depends on whether both of them are still with Ringstar, because I'm sure Tony Yoka signed for the same promotional company with Joe Joyce from the very start. I'm not sure what has happened during the sort of interim ensuing fights that both of them have had, but if they're still with or have a connection with Ringstar Promotions, then yeah, that fight can definitely be made, and that can be marketed as well with what happened transpired in the final of the super heavyweight Olympics. Joyce having some sort of a grievance that his endeavors weren't rewarded with a gold medal. So absolutely, that's a potential money spinner they can do as well. But I'm not sure whether Yoka wants to take that fight right now. He may think that Joyce is probably just a little bit ahead in terms of professionally, in terms of his seasoning and opponents. And after this fight, maybe Yoko will be a little bit more reticent. But I'm not sure, whether their paths are intersecting or converging. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's something that they can do in the future, no doubt about it. Um, all right, we'll move on to the undercard fight, and I believe officially it may have been a fighter that you came across for the first time. Upon sort of me mentioning him to you, was a young British fighter from Ilford, who Frank Warren has signed, Hamzah Sheeraz, who fights at 154 pounds, super welterweight or light middle, or depending on which side of the Atlantic Ocean you reside in. Um, very early days in his professional career. He's only in his very young 20s. Frank has identified him with a lot of skill and talent. Um, a fighter who has impressed me as well very early on. But yesterday we saw him fight a fighter from Argentina, Guido, who showed a lot more punch resistance, and hence extending the fight right up until either the last round or I think it was the last round, 10-round fight. Shiraz, orthodox fighter, but he can switch hit with that sort of height and a 74-inch reach. Is a massive individual at that sort of 154 pounds, so he's going to have numerical advantages over pretty much everybody. So therefore, it has translated in his ability to box at range if he's trying to keep range. A good jab, he can fire combinations, he can counter punch as well. We didn't see it as much in this fight with Guido, a shorter opponent, but Shiraz can fight a little bit on the inside. He'll either set the trap of actually taking one or two punches to try and lure the opponents in, and then they may feel that his long arms are going to be a disadvantage at that shorter range. But so the surprising element comes in, and Shiraz is able to fire some good body punches at that sort of shorter range. So he's a fighter who's trying to become a little bit more acclimated at the various ranges, which is good to see. That's exactly the right approach for a fighter who may not have decided to go down the amateur route for a sort of a protracted period. Something that I highly recommend. All of these young fighters that are turning professional, I'm not a big favor of that at all. you've only got to look at the empirical evidence to say that which fighters are actually doing well and which are not, and you'll find that a lot of fighters that have had a good schooling at the world and the amateurs, the World Series of Boxing, the vast majority of them are accruing world championships early and multiple world championships as well, and that's no coincidence. Um, so the emphasis has to be even more rigid and structured for these young fighters who they may have had to do it financially, like Ryan Garcia complaining about that. You know, he needed the money for his family, hence why he didn't go down the Olympic route. Um, and now he can profit on his his sort of social media escapades, whereas Hamzah Sheeraz has to rely on his sort of British Muslim sort of contingency from sort of Ilford and Hackney and sort of Romford, East London, and he seems to sell a little bit of tickets with that sort of public as well. Um, so eventually, Shiraz got a little bit too stuck into first, second gear in the fight, in cruise control, landing all of the cleaner, sharper punches, early body work. Definitely he hurt Guido, but he didn't exploit that, which was disappointing to me. He, After the early rounds, where Guido clearly had a susceptibility and a vulnerability to the body, I felt that if Shiraz had increased his intensity, moved up the gears, and just targeted the body with some decoys up in body, using headshots to open up the body. If Guido is covering the liver with his elbows tucked in, try and prise open those key areas, show a bit of intelligence and sort of articulation, some creativity. But he was, to me, it looked like a fighter who just wanted to get rid of ring rust and do some rounds in cruise control. Eventually, when his corner told him, look, win the 10th round, then he stepped on the gas and got a little bit of a ridiculous premature stoppage. He was hurt, but Guido could have made the 12th round, so they pretty much gifted him a TKO victory. I guess it's this era's sort of marketing strategy, just keep that fighter's knockout streak alive. It's just nonsense. But we see it all the time. Um, so a lot of positives and positives and negatives, but for me the negatives are a little bit more in this fight. Didn't go through the gears. Clearly he's got to show better killer instinct and disposing of these opponents quickly, rapidly. If you've got the ability, and he had all of that, he had the power advantage as well. But a young man, we'll put it down to that. It's still very early days, maturation period, inexperience, and they say good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from a lot of bad judgment. So we'll wait to see what happens in the next fight. I know, official, you wanted to say you wanted to give your appraisal on watching Hamzah for the first time live.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, as you can see, you being someone who already followed him, I see. I can clearly see why you were annoyed with how he was boxing. So, but for me, watching him for the first time, and thank you a lot for helping me. To discover Hamzah Sheeraz, because he's a very nice fighter, man. I was pretty impressed with his abilities, with his skills, with his talent. And look, it's coming from someone who never liked those super tall, long range fighters. I don't know, me personally, I always preferred the smaller, shorter fighters. That's just personal. Those are the type of fighters that I prefer to watch. But man, even despite his size, he's clearly look, he's young, he's 21 years old, so he's able with his impressive size to box at 154. But yeah, man, it was funny to me watching him in the ring, a guy that tall, that long, that rangy. But even despite not, it's not only his size, he clearly has some real talent. Of course he's gonna use his size, but even like you said on the inside, okay, in this fight he was not fighting a lot on the inside, not at all, but he was doing very good of you know keeping his those very long arms uh, tucked and staying compact, doing good blocking punches on the inside when he was letting Guido Pito working a bit there. But he showed me a lot of good things, man. Good footwork, nice that the way he moves for his size. I mean, he's not a heavyweight, of course, but it's always nice to see. Now, at the beginning of the fight, he was looking a bit, I don't know, um, maybe telegraphing some of his punches in the beginning, but
Yes.
later in the fight he showed me that he can throw that straight right hand. He can throw a very short right hand. I like the way he throws it, and not only that, but the left hook and the left uppercut. He was timing Guido Pito with a good left uppercut and short left hooks. So even despite his long range, he's able to snap short compact punches with that with both hands, either straight right, compact straight right, or a compact left, very short left uppercut upstairs and left hook. So those are the things that impressed me. Also, the way he's setting up, those punches, either with angles or by throwing the right hand to set up the left hand. When he uses that right hand often or like a decoy punch. So he turns his shoulder when sorry for the background noise. When he throws his right hand, he he rotates his shoulders, and his right shoulder ends over his left front knee, and that way his left shoulder is on the outside, and from there he's able to throw very nice short left hooks. Now, yeah, I clearly saw that in this fight he was working on the things, trying, and he was also showing the different things. Sorry for being all over the place, but I'm just trying to remember all the things that he was doing. Uh, because in my opinion, he was clearly, if he wanted, he would be able to take Guido out by the fourth round. And I saw him rocking Guido really bad even in the third, but especially in the fourth round. But he just kept on. Throwing one punch at a time. Now, as someone who wasn't able to watch his previous fights, I'm not aware if that's the way he boxes all the time with this very low activity, but this what the sense that I had from watching this fight the last night was that he was very aware that he can take him out anytime he wants, but he just decided to work on the things and get the rounds in, like you said, shake off the ring rust, and we were especially able to see it at the very end, in the very last round, which when it began, he started throwing everything he could on Guido. So yeah, the fight was not, especially for you and the other guys who already knew about him. Um, I clearly see why you were kind of disappointed, and me myself, I was, because fight was what wasn't exciting at all, but it was a nice occasion for me to discover him, and I saw him as well yeah, his work rate was very low, but he would take his time, and he clearly wanted to show at some moments his footwork, at the other point him switching stance, um, at some point the lateral movement, things like that, counter punching. So he was showing many different things by just a bit, not showing too much, but he showed a bit of everything at very tiny amount, if you get me. By the way, shout out to the new viewers, Alone or Alone and Wolves Wolf Run. Yeah, so that would be my assessment of this fight. I really appreciate that I was able to watch him. That's someone who's gonna be on my radar in the future. I already downloaded this fight because I do think it would be good to make a breakdown of those young fighters who have some potential, some real potential, and he clearly has it, because I was able to see that with him it's not all about his size, and a lot of fighters would try to impose their size, and that is smart, but he in this fight he was not even using it. I was I was able to see that he clearly has some very good skills, and can't wait to see him the next time. Although I really hope that the next time, unlike the last night, he's gonna put it on much sooner, and he's going to look more exciting. Corruption, corruption probably fell asleep.
Yeah. No, I had. What I was going to say is they're going to have to keep the momentum with this kid and keep him active. I mean, he can fight at least 5, 6 times a year. I realize the circumstances are difficult um, in terms of acquiring venues, but um, a lot of these fighters, especially who are fighting in sort of small hole shows, etc., they're suffering massively financially. So Frank is going to have to try and conciliate with some of these other promoters and keep getting Shiraz out. Now Eddie Hearn has a lot of 154-pound fighters. I think Frank has a few as well. So there's not maybe a large enough repository. And it's Frank has always been synonymous in terms of getting fighters over from Eastern Europe, but this is where Brexit is going to matter. And I talked about this on a different show. This is where Brexit is going to impact Frank Warren massively, because the ability for him to keep bringing over fighters from whether it's the Czech Republic, Germany, all of these places, France, Slovenia, Romania, etc., that's going to be increasingly difficult now as legislation commences, certainly from the 1st of January, in terms of now getting work permits and justifying if you're bringing over talent from Eastern Europe, then you're going to have a valid enough reason, and it's not going to be easy to acquire work permits, especially when your first choice of fighter has pulled out with an injury and you're looking for a last minute replacement. Frank's not going to have that same repository from Europe now, so he's going to have to look deep into the pool of British talents to do so, and that's going to be a whole new, different, quite a troublesome predicament for him. But it's going to be better because a lot of these fighters that were coming over are just getting basic payday, putting up no resistance whatsoever, and that's not in the vested interest of the fighters who Frank is promoting. A lot of these young British cats are putting up. There's some real good fights that are happening at a lot of these small hall shows. Some of these yeah, fighting for the not even the British, but fighting for some of the other residual titles. You know, you've got some great fights, great promoters who are doing some great jobs. So there's a whole rafter of talent there that is maybe they're not getting the bookings now. So why not bring them out? Give them their chance. You know, put them in with Sheeraz. They're getting a payday. They'll put up some resistance as well, and Sheeraz will keep active as well. If you're not getting any major talent, so it's a whole new different proposition for boxing promoters going forward now. Not only in the UK with they're saying vaccinations that is being developed either by Pfizer or Oxford University going out in sort of Q1 2021, depending on where they've acquired it from. But so the problems are going to be persisting with that. And as I mentioned aforementioned, the EU legislation and the UK legislation kicking in from the 1st of January as well. So yeah, we'll see what happens now. Official, I'm not sure if there was any other fights on this Frank Warren card. These were the only two fights that I saw. I think Jack Catterall was fighting on there as well. Yeah. I just had to punch myself in the testicles just to wake myself up when I'm mentioning this fight. Yeah, Jack fought. I don't know. I can't even remember who the hell he fought. It was going to be a low risk, stay busy fight because he's got the chip. He's ready to cash in against the winner of Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor, who hopefully are going to be fighting for undisputed sometime soon. And Jack and Frank have already made a deal. You know, they've taken some step aside money. So Jack, rather than trying to enforce his mandatory birthright now, has done the wise decision and got the fuck out of the way. Allow them to settle it out. And then Jack will get knocked out by the winner of them. So
Exactly.
so enjoy your step aside money. Horrible fight. That's all I've got to say on that one. Official, anything you?
No,
I'm pretty
no.
sure you don't want to add anything on the fight. Yeah. By the way, you was doing your video analysis for upcoming fights on that one, so I'll give you a pass on that one.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was not really interested into
So
the
yeah.
fight.
So yeah,
I
we'll wait from the fighter from Crawley what happens. All right. Any other significant cards? There was a card taking place from Florida, I believe. An Eddie Hearn DAZN card. The headline fight. Actually, the fight I want to talk a little, well, not briefly, but significant fight anyway. You know, Wan Hang Maniotan, who's 50, went to 53-0 when he defended his WBC minimum weight championship. Now, surely Maniotan, deserves a franchise belt, no? Because under the criteria about all of those fighters have had some sort of a relationship and affiliation with the WBC. But surely Maniotan should have been given a franchise championship before Canelo and Vasily, but they were never going to do that, were they? They'll calculate how much these fights generate, and they think, "What the fuck are we even doing, giving this sanctioning a belt for this guy?" But any case, Mr. TBE moves to 53-0 when he got a unanimous technical decision over Tatsuya Fukuhara over in Thailand on Friday. I think it was on the 18th. The fight happened. Pretty good performance from Manhang. A lot better than what I've seen in sort of recent fights. And there was a little bit talk about that this fight, Fukuhara was going to expose him and pretty much put an end to his title reign. But no, I didn't feel that at all. Pretty commanding performance from Manhang throughout the fight. Fukuhara showed some good boxing in certain bits. You know, I thought he won maybe 2-3 rounds. But the fight, there was a clash of heads. Maniotan got banged up a little bit bad, so they went to the cards, and I think the cards were like 78-74, something like that, 3-4 points margin, which you would expect for a fight in Thailand as well. So yeah, so Mr. TBE continues with that 53-0 run. For sure, I don't think you saw this fight, no?
No. I missed it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, missed it. So
Okay.
I
Yeah,
was
I'll. If I was you, I'd rather watch that than Jack Catterall. Yeah, that's the better fight to watch. On the
I also
DAZN card, we had well, the only fight I was interested in that card, two fights. We had Daniar Yelusinov up against Terence Crawford's most decorated opponent, the
exactly.
only unified champion on his resume, the mighty Julius Mandingo, and Julius. It would have been better if he got out his 10-inch cock and used it as a truncheon, because he's boxing, his gloves didn't do absolutely anything up against a Kazakh southpaw who was 66-11 in the Olympics, but he beat Shakram Girsam in the final of the Rio Olympics. Pretty controversial decision, I felt, but Eddie Hearn was getting a little bit disillusioned with Daniel not translating the form he showed in the amateurs into the professional ranks, and he wanted to make so there was a little bit of acrimonious tension between the two fighters. But I guess it was Eddie Hearn's way of spurring Yelusinov to start sitting down on his punches rather than boxing. It is entertainment at the end of the day. So, and recently we've seen Daniel, stepping up, and Indongo, who's not had a lot of rounds since winning the unified championship, but even then he still didn't have a lot of rounds. He only went one round in Russia up against Edward Troinovsky. Troinovsky came out like a zombie, had no idea how to fight a southpaw, and just ran into an overhand left hand. Shocked the Russians. That was a cherry pick gone wrong.
Absolutely.
And then credit to the Indongo, he didn't have any homecoming fights. He went straight to Scotland and fought Ricky Burns, and outboxed Ricky Burns for 12 rounds, and that clearly emphasized just how completely washed up Ricky Burns was. If somebody as unbelievably terrible as Julius Indongo can outbox you for 12 rounds in your own backyard and beat you for the WBA 140-pound championship. Don't think Ricky even won a single round in the fight. So Indongo from there went straight to Nebraska to fight, Crawford. So as I mentioned before, he did all of the donkey work, picked up all of the titles on the road, went back to back. Limited fighter, but why not try, man? Roll the dice. You never know. You might get a Troinovsky overhand right and knock Crawford out. I prayed that was going to happen, but it never happened. So, and ever since, that was a third round knockout. Then Regis Prograis stopped him in the second round, knocked him out, and then he had one fight in between, and then this fight. So, in 3 years, Indongo has just not had no ring time whatsoever. And you can clearly see in this fight that his punch resistance was worse than Kell Brooks. Very sad sight, being laid out by Yelusinov, who if you loosen off, hit a silent night pillow, he would break his wrist. Um, he's got no power, but maybe you know, he's got good technique, but good boxing ability. But um, yeah, that was a sad sight, and my God, what does that say about Terence Crawford's resume, official?
Exactly. I mean,
Pound
you
for
said
pound, man. Pound for pound, number one.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Terrence's most decorated victory didn't have many rounds, didn't get many rounds in these last couple of years because he was getting knocked out every time in the first 2 3 rounds, and it continued to happen. Yeah, I mean, look, Yeltsinov, he's not, he's nowhere near being a big puncher, but yeah, he was using his sharpness, his timing well, and I'm happy to see him back because I enjoy watching Yeltsinov because I think he's very talented, but I was just so disappointed with the fact that. Not only he and I'm not sure if I'm gonna blame Eddie Hearn for that or Yeltsinov. Um, it always sucks when you see a very talented kid when he turns pro very late in mid late 20s, so he's already 29 years old. The previous year or two before all this madness going on, he was having 5 6 fights per year, and I was cool with that. And but I was also hoping to see him step up in competition, being still because of his age. And I like watching him, and I just can't wait to see him against some opponent who can take punches better and is more durable, and on a higher level. Because in Dongo, clearly, I never rated him. He's terrible in my opinion. No disrespect to him, but it's just the reality, at least at the highest level. And Yeltsinov, yeah, he has some flaws. I'm not saying he's amazing, once in a generation type of talent, but I do enjoy watching him. Speaking of him, he does remind me. He always reminded me of a southpaw and more aggressive version of Floyd Mayweather, and I really do appreciate his skills, but I was always wondering about one thing, because watching his amateur fights, and I was not really watching many of his amateur fights, but a couple of them, so about 10 maybe, and I saw him struggling against high work rate pressure fighters,
Yes.
who are working at short range and are pressure fighters. He really does suffer, fighting against them. Even in World Boxing Super Series, there was one fight of that type that he had against someone. Cannot remember who the guy was. Doesn't really important, but the point is that that was another of his fights that I've seen before him turning a pro, and seeing that he struggles against the pressure, and I've seen him getting hurt by those pressure fighters a couple of times, I think. So to me personally, his chin is still questionable. Now maybe he proves me wrong in the future. I hope so, because once again, I really enjoy his talent. But I'm really wondering how good his chain is, and maybe in fact the reason Eddie kept him fighting, let's say, nobodies and didn't let him step up. Maybe could be his chin, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just saying it may be a possibility. And I saw him taking the body shots rather not well, rather bad. So
Do you think it may? Do you think it might be because he's a very big sort of 140 pounder. It's around sort of 5 feet 10, maybe even
yeah,
5'11". So there could be a case that he's maybe a bit weight drawn, given that he's 28 as well. 5'11", fighting at 140. I'm not sure what he's rehydrating to, but maybe that maybe he is a little bit weight drawn, and therefore the punch resistance is not as 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 depth as it could be if he was fully, rehydrated, fighting at say 147, even 154. But you're gonna need punching power at those sort of weight categories. But you're right. I mean, I've seen some really great stuff from him. One of these fights I saw, he threw a straight lead left hand, you know, confused his opponent, fainted with the jab through the straight left hand. Then he came with the same hand, he came out with the hook, left hook. So overhand left, straight left, beautiful it was. Then hook, and then as it buzzed him up, penetrated the guard, then he came with an uppercut just straight after that. So with his power hand, his backhand, firing those punches in that sort of sequence, it was like, wow, man. It was like very sort of offbeat, but he fight it with like good speed as well, very good timing. Um, yeah. There is I mean, a lot of natural talent, but in the World Series of boxing, I don't think he was defeated in that. I think he had only 3 or 4 fights, but there was one fighter from Uzbekistan as well who he fought Girsov in the final, but he fought another. Um, but he was lucky in that sort of shorter period that he was able to use his size, and he was moving a lot laterally and just sort of pot shotting, using his reach as well. So you can get away with it against pressure fighters for 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds, but 12-round fight, and they're going to be attacking his body as well. He's got that very long sort of torso area as well. So he's going to have to step up with his punches. He's going to have to win their respect very early, and he's starting to do that now. He's showing some nastiness and that, which is good. But I'm not sure what Eddie Hearn is going to do. 100 and, yeah, I don't know. Was this fight yesterday at 140? Ndongo is 140, no? Was that fight?
he
That's why
moved up to
I thought he
147.
was 147 and he went back down to 100. I don't know what. But Ndongo is not 147. So I thought the fight yesterday was at 140, but I didn't see the weigh in or whatever else. So if he's between 140 and 147, I think his title opportunities are going to be difficult at 147, whereas we know all of the belts are with the PBC, except albeit Terence Crawford. So how he's going to get a mandatory berth, moving himself up, that's the juxtaposition at 147. It's just problems, even for somebody who's out of that sort of circle in Crawford. So how the hell is people like you loose enough and that going to get title shots? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a difficult one for Eddie. Maybe 140 pounds might be a little bit better, but at the moment we're going to get an undisputed. So maybe once the belts go to one fighter and then they get splintered off with maybe a Josh Taylor or a Ramirez, you'd think an official after they become undisputed, either one of them or either the champion or both of them move up to 147 straight after. Josh Taylor's already indicated that he's having weight problems, so he'll probably do that. So it's likely that anybody who stays around at 140, that the belts are going to get splintered off. So there could be a mini little tournaments for all of the vacant belts. But there's a hell of a lot of talent and sharks out there. got people like Subriel Matthias and all of those cats, waiting for their title shot. So I don't know if Yulushinov wants to fight him, but it could have some interesting matchups.
If I listen to whom?
If you got like like a Subriel Matthias and the Yulushinov, you've got you got so many great fighters at 140 coming up, and others who are waiting for their title shot as well. So maybe it would be better if Yulushinov remained at 140 in terms of maybe trying to get a roadmap, a pathway to some sort of a mandatory or a championship, or maybe even a vacant belt in the future. That might be his best shot, but we'll see.
But correction, by the way, just a minor correction. This fight was at 147 effectively. So
okay.
Yelusinov stayed at 147. Is just Indango who moved up.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And by the way, I was surprised that Josh Taylor is still at 140, because I know very well that both him and Regis Prograis have been struggling to make 140. Even if you remember, I'm not sure if you watched it, but on the World Series of Boxing, or whatever the name of the organization who makes the tournaments, they were doing some promo videos and documentaries the same way they did it for before Usyk and the finals between Usyk and Gassiev. So they did the same thing before the Taylor Prograis fight, and they were following Prograis, who was really struggling to make the weight for the finals. It was interesting. So I was even surprised after watching the documentary that he was able to find the second I don't know how do you say it, but I was surprised that Prograis was able to turn it up in the late rounds of their fight in the finals. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to say.
All right. I mean, for me, the only significant fight on the card was watching Margo Majidov, who's turned over professionally very recently after a very deep, protracted amateur career, originally from sort of Dagestan, Chechnya, Dagestan, but relocated to Azerbaijan, and he stayed, in the amateur ranks for quite a long time and very well decorated. Won the world amateur championships 3 times and medaled in the Olympics as well, won a bronze. Very decent fighter, very simplified style. But he's turned professional, what is he, 34, 35, something now. So they're going to have to definitely fast track him. He's pretty ready right now. He's mentioned that he doesn't really need a hell of a lot of seasoning, but it's going to be difficult once all of these belts are in holding patterns at the moment. It's pretty crazy what's happening in boxing. We're getting to a stage where so much young talent is being stifled in all of these mandatory positions as well. It's just too many super fights being made. The circular flow of income is just going between the big fighters at the top of the ranks. It's just economic genocide which is going on. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But Margo Majidov fought a Puerto Rican cat who was undefeated, but he was very heavy at around sort of 280, 290 pounds. Bizarrely, for sort of and somebody with not that many fights under his ranks, he had a number of years out of the sport for an unknown reason. So coming back after a long sort of absence to fight somebody as dangerous as that may not be reflected in what is accrued in the professional ranks, but if you'd watched his amateur game, you look at his psychology, his mentality, and his boxing skill. A forward coming to the pressure fighter, but he doesn't smother his punches at all. Very good in maintaining distance and range and landing good jab and good power punches, and he knows how to penetrate, come around the guard with a lot of these fighters. He's seen all of the shelling up, the peekaboo styles, or whatever else. So you'll either penetrate with the right hand, tap, bait, come round the guard, prise open, and yeah, he did that against the Cuban and pretty much knocked this guy out on his feet. The Cuban was just depleted by even after the first round, and that's what happens when you're 290 pounds. Sorry, the Puerto Rican indicated that boxing was his avenue to actually losing weight. So it makes you wonder, what the hell were you weighing before you started boxing?
Yeah.
That was, I was like, what the fuck is that all about, man? My God. And with poor conditioning, no acclimation, no fights of any significance, we know that your energy tanks is just going to be depleted by one of these power punches. And these Russian Muslims who are coming from Dagestan, man, these people do not fuck around, man. They are some of the tough and hard. If you understand what is going on in Chechnya and what these people are going through with the Russian Federation all the time, and you look at the sheer number of these fighters that are going into not only boxing but mixed martial arts, etc., and the level of success they've accrued with Magomedov and in the UFC being the greatest of all time, and you're seeing Chechenian fighters. We've seen it before in the heavyweight ranks. We're seeing it now with Artur Batarbiev. We're seeing a hell of a lot of fighters all over the place. Yeah, these are you don't fuck around with these cats. And yeah, the Puerto Rican, the first power punches and the body shots just zapped his energy. Then he was just a sitting target. Yeah, and he got hurt pretty badly, and you could just see that he didn't know where he was. It was just air. It was just oxygen depletion. So I think they did the wise thing and not giving him fluids too quickly. It was all about trying to increase his air circulation. They should have had an oxygen mask and a tank there ready to try and sort of replenish his supply, because that's what he needed. And you don't want to move him until he has sufficient air that goes to the rest of his muscles that can kind of repair the damage that is done by the punches. Yeah, and this is the problem with matchmaking as well, official. As boxing fans, we're always worried about the health of some of these veterans or fighters that we've got an affiliation with. Oh, I don't want to see Manny Pacquiao back in the ring. He's 41. I don't want to see him hurt and all that bullshit. We worry about Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, or a lot of these veterans. We're all worried about their health. But what about these prospects who are getting absolutely murked? All these journeymen that are getting murked by all these prospects who we're all picking for great things in the future. No one's worried about their health. Did we ever see emails coming out before and saying, I don't want to see this Puerto Rican cat in the ring with Majidov because he's going to get annihilated? There is no such sympathy for these cats that are getting knocked out, blistered, annihilated in the first, second round. Yet it's all about gratification for their highlight reels and whatever else that are promoted on ESPN and DAZN and whatever else. But yeah, man, I don't want to see ridiculous matchmaking like this, man. That served Majidov no purpose whatsoever. Somebody like that, just because he had an undefeated record, official. That is just a subliminal a subliminal way of just hypnotizing boxing fans to thinking, yeah, 2 undefeated, somebody's O has got to go, and the rest of that fucking
Yeah.
madness. What the hell does that mean? You know, somebody's life is gonna go if you carry on with that bullshit. Not somebody's O. Um,
Yes, yes, that's true. Oh, look, I haven't seen this fight, but I wanted to watch it, and I'll watch it soon because I really wanted to see Majidov. I haven't seen him yet, but I heard many good things about him. Well, especially from Shep, who's in the comments, and also from Duck. And big up to Duck. I don't know if he's listening to us right now, but big up to him as well. And yeah, I wanted to see it, but an excellent point, corruption, because I was thinking about it as well, and I know that a couple of months ago, um, there was, I forgot his name, but an ex-fighter who, I think he was a bantamweight, or I don't know, not sure, who was on BDA, and he said something along the lines that when he was developing and when he was a prospect, before going into title fights, when he was fighting the journeyman, he didn't wanted to knock them out because he knew. Now, of course, it depends if he's telling the truth or if he's bullshitting. But if that's true, and I have no reason to believe it, to believe otherwise, that's that's something that I respect, because he was saying that he doesn't need to knock those journeymen out, because they're just journeymen, so if they're getting knocked out, they have less chances to fight soon again, and win their money, because they're living from that. Mm, and especially it just goes along the lines. Maybe I'm not making perfect sense, but it goes along the lines of what you're saying. Everybody's worrying about Pacquiao or Tyson getting hurt, but no one is thinking about those fighters who are getting bashed by the prospects
yeah,
on the weekly basis.
they're getting pulverized. This guy is, as we mentioned, 3 times world amateur boxing champion, Olympic medalist. It's beaten all sorts of fighters, even the current unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. So you've got him. Doesn't do anything to them, and what happens to their opponents, man? You're going to end up killing these cats in the ring. These guys can punch. Um, so it serves nobody any. There's no there's no advantages. No doubt that the Puerto Rican cat needed the money, because I'm sure he's not getting a lot of fights, and he's been out of the ring as well. So they're prepared to take this risk for money, but I don't know whether it's a wise decision. You've got no chance. You're just going to get your head blown off, man. It's just, to me, is a completely pointless exercise. Uh, Majidov is the only thing he's getting is a payday and clearing out a little bit of rust. But is his skills being sharpened at all? No. He knew he was going to win that. I think it was obvious. You're not going to get absolutely any odds on it being a 50-50 competitive fight. So he doesn't need this, man. He needs guys like him can fight Filip Hrgovic right now. He needs to be fighting these Zili Zangs, and he needs a Michael Hunter right now. People like that don't need to fuck around. That's the level. But whether those fighters want to take an unknown, dangerous fighter that's maybe just too high risk and no return, it's a combination of economics and progressing their career and trying to minimize the amount of risk you can. It's not about a fight now. We've got 7 or 8 heavyweights in Matchroom. We've got Hergovich, we've got Alan Babbage, who's a security guard, or whatever these fighters are, man. White chocolates, and these. Eddie's got a whole bunch of heavyweights, and you can mix and match all of them, but no one really wants to fight one another. You've got Filip Hergovich obviously complaining that no one's prepared to sign a contract to fight him. So, and I can understand that, definitely. But you really think Majidov is going to reject that fight? I don't think he will. I think it'll probably be both of their biggest paydays as well. So that'll be a great fight for me. Not sure what L-Dog's thoughts are on that fight, but yeah, I think Eddie Hearn can get a little bit creative in that sense, but you got to push this guy better, man. I'm sure Philippe will take that fight as well. He's just looking for competition as well. He's getting a bit pissed off. So we'll see what happens. I just hope it's the case that Eddie doesn't have too many heavyweights and he's just focusing on one of them, and he's not doing a good enough job with the others, because looking at some of the paydays that Philip and that are getting as well, they're getting absolutely subsistent wages as well, really bad paydays as well. So just a case of top heavy, and the rest of the fighters or the fringe fighters are just getting economically sucked out of the equation. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, definitely official. Keep an eye out on Majidov. Go back and watch some of his amateur fights as well. Give you a good sort of background on him. And I think the top of the bill was a fight that I pretty much had no interest in whatsoever. Daniel Jacobs and Gabe Rosado fighting at 168 pounds. We went into it with Danny Jacobs, and what has happened to this guy, the opportunity cost that presented themselves to him, in which he had a trade-off between money, being comfortable, and legacy, being a warrior, and competition. And clearly he's gone down the path of trying to maximize his earnings from the ring and minimize his risk. And we've seen the level of performances that he's put in the ring. It's just progressively going down and down and down. And I mean, as I said, I my own theory that I had, and it's not something I necessarily subscribe to, but it is a theory that maybe what precipitated all of this was Jacobs recovering from cancer. And we know what it can do. And maybe it just changed his whole mental psychology, in the sense that he's thought that he's been given another opportunity to live. And now he's the miracle man. He's got a young child. I don't think he was married back then. So maybe he wants to make sure that he's financially comfortable, and so is his family. And it is your natural talent that can only take you to a certain distance, and that's what he's relied on. And he has natural talent because he was a very good amateur, so the talent is there. But as all trainers re-emphasize, talent not only gets you so far. After that, it's all about hard work. And Jacobs just, there's no capacity from hard work from him, from what I can see. He's always complaining. He's complaining about weight, complained about remaining at 160 pounds. His chin was very, very suspect as well. And that's one of the reasons why in the Golovkin fight, he chose to exercise not fighting for the IBF, because he was not willing to comply with their second day 10-pound threshold rehydration. His strategy was to not be constrained in his rehydration, and to come in as big, as heavy as he could, because he was afraid of Golovkin's power. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. So what is the better way of mitigating A ferocious power punches power, and the only way you can is either you box and move or you try and avoid it. But in combination with that, you come in as heavy as you can so you can try and absorb the punches as best as you can, especially when you've been knocked out before and you've been dropped by a fighter in the Latin sake who's got no punch power whatsoever. So yeah, maybe that chin as well was something that, I know Gonzalo was entertaining that notion. That also has some validity as well, instead of in combination to what I was saying about maybe, Jacob's psychology has changed with him recovering from cancer, and that's factored into the level of performance is just sort of going downhill. Official, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think is this whole precipitating factor in Daniel Jacobs just flattering to deceive, getting, not winning the big championship fights and starting to look really bad up against fighters like Rosado who have got 12 losses, washed up, a lot smaller than him. He has all of the advantages in height, size, skill, etc., but looking absolutely shit.
Yeah, look, so he's a very interesting case because one thing is sure, yeah, uh, the level at which he's performing right now is levels below from what we were used to seeing him. Now, I've been wondering about it myself. Is it because he's shut, or just the lack of the work ethics? Because I really used to enjoy watching him fight. I think he has some real talent, but I'm asking that question myself. Is it because of the lack of effort from his part, or is it just him being shut? Because right before this fight, people were saying, and yes, they were indeed right. They were saying that Jacobs should have an easy, stay busy fight with Rosario. Uh, but they forgot that they just forgot how terrible he was looking in his very previous fight against none other than Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who who was always overrated and never was really good. And plus, on top of that, even Chavez Jr. himself was shot. Not even, not the same bum Chavez Jr. that we used to see a couple of years ago. So
It's awful in it,
perform.
official. If you're trying to build your legacy, you move up to 168 pounds, and the first fight, the first fighter you take on is Julio Cesar Chavez. What does that say about your excuse me?
Aspirations.
Yeah, your ambitions, whatever. It's clearly, you know, Chavez at that stage. What sort of equity did he have with boxing fans, even Mexicans? No one, gave a fuck about this guy, man. He never showed, has been an embarrassment to the family name, a financial mercenary, just no dedication in and out of the ring, etc. And that's who you take on, Jacobs, when you've been complaining about being weight drawn at 160 pounds for all those years. And then you fight somebody like that, and then Rosado straight after, man. That is just diabolical. He's made a tremendous amount of money. I think he was one of Eddie Hearn's first signings, no, on the zone. No
I
doubt
think
about
so.
it.
I think so. Yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Excuse me. And prior to that, he had a lucrative contract with HBO as well. I think
Mhm.
he was the first Al Heyman fighter that was on an Eddie Hearn books as well, because I think he was still being advised by Al when he was actually signed. Certainly with HBO, and I think certainly with Eddie Hearn as well, he was still being advised by Al. So
Yes,
maybe,
that's correct.
yeah. So clearly, those Al Heyman characteristics have factored into his psychology, his demeanor, etc. And Canelo Alvarez fight was bizarre because Canelo was horrible in that fight. Canelo
Yeah.
was atrocious in that fight, and Jacobs had all of the opportunity in that fight to do something, and he didn't do absolutely anything against
I,
significantly under par Canelo, and that said it all to me.
I think that that Canelo fight was the case of both fighters being, uh, in fighting at in first speed. I don't know how to express myself, but
Yeah,
neither of them really trying hard to win. They were both looking lethargic. It was still both fighters on a very high level, but neither of them trying to win. It was like, well, a good term for it would be a sparring match, you know. So yeah, there is consistency even that fight. Yeah, that's another example of, well, we are making a good case of, it's what I'm trying to say is just a good proof of what we are saying. Just fight, the way Danny Jacobs has been looking from fight to fight to fight since fighting Golovkin. I cannot remember what was his next fight, maybe the Revanchenko, and there he performed very well. I was in fact impressed with him. uh, but right after those two fights, he was, he was just half-assing in the ring. I don't know. Yeah, he's clearly one of the guys who was using his size to his advantage. But beside that, he still had some natural abilities, and not only speed and power, but also showcasing some skills like those he showed against Derevyanchenko. I think that performance from him was very good and underrated. But from there on, it was downhill. And especially, fighting Canelo, who has a low work rate and hasn't been looking great neither, man. I mean, he's seeing many similarities with Canelo in that regard. Not really trying as hard. Now he's
yeah.
perform still performing at a higher level than Danny Jacobs. There's no doubt about it, and he's still a top level fighter. Uh, Able to box at the highest level, but still I'm seeing, him not sense not seeing any sense of urgency in the way he's fighting.
And a very fortunate man as well, as we mentioned. He even back in the day when he was talking about all of this Battle of Brooklyn with Peter Quillen, um, but no one in Brooklyn gave a fuck about either fighter. I mean, they couldn't even sell that half out. So he's
Yeah.
never really had any sort of support from boxing fans as well. But still, that didn't stop him in his. And as Don King says, in life or in boxing, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you can negotiate. And maybe his negotiation skills have been a lot better than his boxing skills because somehow he's always been able to get those sort of lucrative contracts and decent paydays, and it's not been reciprocated in his performances as well. So I've always I've always said Daniel Jacobs is garbage. I've said that for like over like 7 years since. Um, yeah, he's never really impressed me, the Miracle Man. Um, and with Canelo, you were mentioning before, official. That fight was all about DAZN trying to recoup and trying to get a massive increase in subscriptions, which they were massively suffering from. So they just hyped and hyped that fight. didn't sell out anything. It was poor in terms of the amount of money that they recouped. And if you look at Canelo Alvarez as well, official, if you're giving him an incentivized, guaranteed purse, then he's really not even. What risk does he have to take? He's going to fight in cruise control as well. Why does he have to risk it, knowing that his money is not correlated on any sort of gate receipts or pay-per-view, what it's accrued, etc. So you're going to get these lackluster performances, and that's what happens with the stupidity in their strategy of trying to accrue these talents, with these absolutely ridiculous contracts. The short-sightedness of DAZN, and I talked about it straight away when I did a video on DAZN. I said that it's going to be a very, very difficult market to penetrate, especially with an application that people can't even pronounce the name. They don't know whether it's
Yeah.
DAZN or DAZN. If the name is not right, then how on earth are people going to be in tune with the app? Um, and you don't understand US boxing. You know that these powerhouse networks that have the monopoly on sports, that can control the bigger sports, and then they can put on niche sports like boxing on the same card, so then they can transfer or migrate their audiences from the biggest sports, whether it's the National Football League or the NBA or the National Hockey League or baseball, etc. So it's about the trickle down effects, and that's how these big networks were able to, uh, you, you know, get boxing on these cards and get a reasonable enough crowd anyway. Because had they not had these sports, then I think you would have had much worse numbers in terms of boxing viewership, etc. So it's only because of the long relationship that these guys have had with these networks. So how on earth is a new network going to penetrate that market, and an application as well? So it's not like a cable or a tele or a normal sort of subscription service as well. So, and plus, the amount of fraudulent streaming that is going on now. You can just go on Facebook or Instagram or any of these chat mechanisms which have set up and just ask somebody for a link, and pretty much everybody gets a link as well. So the amount of copyright infringement which is taking place, and that is massively constraining the revenue of a lot of these of a lot of the carriers of these fights as well. So the zone is not gonna, as much as and as hard as they endeavor, official, I don't think they're going to penetrate the US market. I just cannot see it. That sort of technology doesn't work in the way boxing fans are currently in tune with in the States. So it's to force some sort of a revolutionary change, and you go in there with the strategy that very poor choice of words. He calls those demarcations straight away, underestimated it, didn't understand the US market completely. He affiliated himself with John Skipper, who led ESPN before, but done an atrociously bad job. So
Yes.
now these fighters are just benefiting on the contracts that they were able to negotiate with DAZN when the gravy train was rolling and they were trying to penetrate the US. And Daniel Jacobs is not that's not going to be any boost to your revenue stream at all. He's a name. No doubt Jacobs is now going to be looking for a title fight against a Billy Joe or somebody like that as well. Which, would you be interested in that fight, official? For me, I've got no fucking interest
No,
whatsoever in either of them.
not at all. Neither of them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Billy Joe
I
or Jacobs, man,
yeah,
they're but
Rosado, bit of respect to him. He had a bit of ability, a tough guy. He's had some bad decisions. Comes in the ring to fight as well, but a tremendous amount of scar tissue as well. He's not going to. Jacobs should have disposed of him. Everybody was predicting a knockout. It should have been a knockout. I wasn't predicting the knockout. I had no interest in the fight. Gave no views, etc. Previously, didn't even watch the fight. We shared the. I just looked up the result when I heard it was a split decision. You know, I just couldn't stop pissing in my pants. You know, for me, if Jacobs is getting a split decision, that means Rosado won the fight. But I haven't seen it. I can't confirm it. I don't know if anybody in their chat can shed some light on that. Did Rosado get screwed out? I
Yeah, that would be nice to
wouldn't
know
surprise
because
me.
I haven't seen it neither. Yeah, so it would be nice to know, Shep or anybody else in the chat, if you saw the fight, let us know what were your thoughts. But yeah, corruption about the zone model.
Hmm.
That's true. Because look, when you can give that type of contract, give that amount of money to a, let's say, NBA player, knowing that he has to have 82 games in the regular season plus possibly the playoffs, and so you're sure he's gonna be there. And plus it's not the same type of sport, while a boxer like Canelo, look, you already gave him that money in the contract. So what gonna do is he's just gonna make sure in every fight that he's able to, to stay to keep his
Fighting
brain
force control.
cells
Yeah.
intact, yeah, to and stay alive to collect that paycheck. I don't
Yeah,
know how to
yeah.
explain it.
He wasn't. There was no way Alvarez was looking for another a career shortening third fight, even with a completely washed up, old, physically deteriorated, only made now maybe even money orientated Golovkin as well. But
Yeah,
Golovkin once he's pound of flesh, and can you blame him after the way he's been fucked over? Um, right away from sort of Germany as well. Um, but the zone is still trying to entertain that fight as well. I know Golovkin is getting back in the ring very soon, fighting his IBF mandatory. So that'd be good to see what sort of what's left of Golovkin. Um, and Alvarez has maybe indicated that he might still be interested in that third fight, but it could be at 100. I can't see it being happening at middleweight. It may be at 168 pounds if Canelo has clearly intimated that this is the weight category that he's trying to base his career in. So therefore, he's going to expect Golovkin to come up in weight. So that'll be a new dynamic on the fight. Um,
yeah, and if you remember corruption, when the zone just started and the talks and the rumors about them having the third fight began after Triple G fighting Rolls, etc. I remember back then Triple G was being uh, adamant about having that third fight at 160, and Canelo wanted it to happen at 168. Now I'm sure, being that Canelo is a clear A side, that and if Triple G really wants that money, he will accept fighting him at even at 168. Or I'm not so sure about it, because he was when they both signed to the zone, he was very adamant about fighting Canelo only at 160. So that would be interesting to see as well how it is going to play out.
yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. The appetite for a third fight between the two, I'm not sure. You know, Canelo's. We've already broken down Canelo's career on the coup d'état of boxing. You know, pretty chronologically, we've broken down. We've exposed all of the A side shit that he's managed to pull in fight after fight after fight, and fortunate performances, lucky performances, uh, his ability to be impervious to drug testing and um, just his overall dictatorship of the sport. That's the
Yeah.
ostentatious of the man that is now. And to me, he's an overrated hype job. I think Tyson Fury is also an overrated hype job. All of these guys, you've got to break down their careers properly. And I know we were having a bit of a discussion on the Fury one, but we'll do the Fury one next time, and we'll go down his entire career, and we'll expose all of the
Nice.
gifts and the falsified fights and the drug testing and the sheer shambolic thing what the British Boxing Board of Control and UCAD did with him, which is unprecedented. And for all of the people thinking that he's some sort of a defensive master and whatever, we'll show you all of the vulnerabilities, the knockdowns. He's had been protected by referees with his eyes busted up, and man, that Tyson Fury is the equivalent of Canelo in the heavyweight ranks. Put it that way. But we'll
Nice.
do that in the future. Official, I'm not sure if there's any other post-fight reviews to cover. I didn't see anything else.
No, not really. There was nothing else happening. I don't think so. At least not important enough for me to remember.
Yeah, I think in terms of boxing news, if there's, I think Joshua Franco at the tender age of 24 is going to be one of these rare fighters who's going to have soon to have 2 trilogies at such a tender age, which is pretty crazy. It's almost like one of those throwback fighters that we talk about in the past. They had it with Negrete, and now with so official, as we were talking about, they're going to force this guy. They're going to give him a bit of a payday over in Australia to fight on Teofimo and the Greek fisherman who Teofimo Lopez is fighting.
Oh, so that fight is about to really be done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be in down. I could be wrong. As I said, the coup d'etat of boxing is not about boxing news and all that bullshit.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just heard it may be in Australia. It might be a little bit more lucrative. I think the lockdown measures over there may be more conducive to getting a larger gate receipt in Australia. Everything is pretty much pay-per-view over there as well. So Teofimo, the most fortunate man in boxing, he's going to be fighting against George Kambosos, who couldn't even put a dent into 126-pound Lee Selby. So that's a pretty garbage fight, I think, personally. Andrew Maloney and Joshua Franco, that's the only interest for me on that card. And what's going to happen now, official? They tried to screw Franco first fight, but he got the title. Then basically the sheer incompetence of people like Robert Byrd and all of them and Top Rank trying to exercise their power and influence and trying to, influence the decision-making process with an unprecedented replay and the time. But it was just unbelievable stupidity how they couldn't make the correct decision, in which Franco would have lost the belt and he would have gone to Maloney. So now inevitably they're having a third match in Australia. What the hell is going to happen in the third fight? But for me, that's a really intriguing fight.
For me as well. In fact, I feel the way I feel about them too is like the second fight never happened.
Yeah.
Because the fight really didn't even have a chance to really start. As early as the second round, it already got stopped. So yeah. But still interested in that, especially since the first fight was very good in my opinion. I enjoyed it, and it's you know what, it's going to be interesting because at least for the second fight, Joshua Franco was able to see what Maloney's game plan was for the rematch. So maybe before that rematch, he wasn't aware of it, but he saw he saw him boxing from the outside in the rematch until that very really unfortunate stoppage. But yeah, so I would say this time for the third fight, he would be prepared for that, or he'll try to, at least he'll try to prepare himself for even for Milani boxing from the outside and going in and out. So it's gonna be interesting.
And I mean, from my perspective, I can say with full confidence that if Franco did not sustain that eye damage, all of the early sort of insurrection from Maloney, all of his sharp work, it wasn't going to trouble Joshua Franco. He would have just slowly stepped up in gear, you know, done his reconnaissance, and then he would have started his work. And I think Franco would have broken him down as per the first fight as well, official. I don't know what your perspective are. Is just that that's a fighter who, as we mentioned, he's all about harder punches, precision. He doesn't. If there's a trade-off between accuracy and timing rather than activity, what Maloney was exemplifying, Maloney, Franco is the latter. He's all about breaking him down slowly and not wasting punches. So I think after round three or what, after realizing Maloney had come out quick, maybe won the early rounds, is looking, just to accrue points, get those rounds under the banks, etc. Then, because Maloney was more active throwing punches, there would have been countering opportunities, and Franco has a beautiful counter left hand, and I think we would have seen that come into play uh, in the sort of middle rounds of the fight. So that's what's going to make it interesting. You're spot on, official. If we see a more aggressive Maloney, Franco he's going to have countering opportunities. He's going to love that, but he's going to have to start a little bit faster as well. We're not sure. The eye should heal up. That shouldn't be a factor in the fight. There was no scar damage or surgical sort of repair of any sort of flesh damage, etc. on the outside. It was just cornea sort of pupil inner eye damage, so that'll heal up over a significant period. But
Yes.
yeah, that's a fight very very much looking forward to, and Franco is gonna have to knock him out again because he ain't getting the decision in Australia.
But the corruption, that's
Yeah,
something that I wanted to ask you. So
yeah.
listening to you talking about how the rematch would have went if that stoppage hadn't occurred, but it's questionable if Franco would be able to break him down to the point of stopping him. So even with him possibly deserving uh, the victory in the rematch, if that stoppage never happened, I don't think he would get it, because yeah, I mean the official decision of the of Robert Bird, who was watching the replays, uh, went against the wishes of Bob Arum, but it doesn't mean that Bob Arum didn't have the judges, not the referee, but the judges um, in his pocket. So yeah, it's
Bob Arum definitely had the judges, but this is the thing, official. It may have been a conspiracy, a collusion between Bob Arum and the Nevada State Athletic Commission, who were trying to exercise the replays and trying to make a retrospective correction. So either Aram said that we can have a money spinning third fight in Australia after the controversy of this fight, or as I think it was just a sheer case of incompetence from these people who were viewing the replay and they couldn't ascertain whether it was a punch or a headbutt that had exerted the damage, where it was clearly obvious to the boxing public and even ESPN, but ESPN had no jurisdiction in showing them footage or trying to exercise a dialogue directly with the arbitrators of the fight. They got no and that's why me and you, official, probably the only channel out there who said that we are glad that justice, said
yes.
that a correct adjudication from the video replay, the physical correct decision wasn't applied because this whole fight was about screwing Joshua Franco in the first place. A rematch was not warranted after the first fight because it was a dominating performance. There was no, but we mentioned that the scorecards were unbelievably close. If Franco had not induced a knockdown, he would have not won the belt. Maloney would have retained it, and that would have been a fucking travesty.
Travesty, absolutely. I had
Yeah,
that first fight. I scored it 9 rounds to 3, or maybe 8 rounds to 4
yeah,
at worst for Joshua Franco. So yeah, just like you said, that fight, that rematch was all about fucking him over.
yeah.
Uh,
So all
so
these motherfuckers that were crying because they'd only seen the rematch in isolation, but they don't know the history of what happened, transpired between them in the first fight, and the potential fix that was in, but they're just judging it in isolation. That's the short-sightedness of these fucking boxing fans and these channels, man. They all need to be gassed and removed from YouTube, man, because I'm just sick of their stupidity and short-sightedness, you know. Don't even
so
speak about these weight categories because you ain't got a fucking clue, you know. Just try and stick to your sticking your tongue up the Crawford's asses and all of that bullshit. You know, they don't need you over there, man. You
so
bring
sorry,
absolutely no
corruption.
points of any validity.
Sorry, corruption.
Yeah.
I just missed the last 20 seconds, but because it dropped me out. But very curious, what were you talking about?
Yeah, I was just, you know, flaming up all of these cats on their boxing channels that are all talking of giving their sixpence in, giving their adjudication on what happened, but they got no idea whatsoever. It's just misrepresentation of the fight, and they don't understand or the separation in power. You've got, as I've spoken about it before, official in the financial markets. Yeah, you've got Chinese walls between the front office and back office. In
Mhm.
boxing, you've got to have the same thing. You cannot have fighters who are signed not only with the network, not only with the promoter, but they've got a direct relationship with the network. That's
Yeah,
where it becomes too fucking dangerous. Then the propensity of a conflict of interest becomes more and more acute because then they start trying to influence the decision, which Top Rank and certainly ESPN were. You know, they and that for me is disgusting because I've seen that in the financial markets over the years, and I understand the legislation that they put into place. So no traders can go into back office, and back office can't interact with the traders because you're just going to get corruption going. Traders before used to be able to receive gifts, you know, bottles of wine or whatever from their clients, etc. But under anti ABC legislation, anti-bribery and corruption, they stopped all of that. And part of my job in the past was sort of monitoring all of that in the past. So those markets are still corrupt, and I can go on about how it happens, but there are certain rules and demarcation that is put into place. But with boxing, there is none of that. There is no screening of the judges. There is no screening of the referees. You need to be analyzing their income. You need to be analyzing their bank. It's got nothing to do with privacy. It's to do with bribery and corruption. And there's no audits taking place. There's no oversight. Um, it is all about the people that can lobby, that have the financial inventory, that have the financial power, that can just corrupt the sport. They can buy whatever officials they want. There's no monitoring oversight. As I mentioned, all of that. It is the wild, wild west. It's prize fighting. The money's involved is astronomical because the money's coming in from overseas markets, etc. So, as Donald Trump indicated, man, the United States is the most corrupt economy on the planet. And I've looked at corruption index. I did a project for an insurance company a number of years ago. They wanted me to measure the corruption index of all of the countries on the planet, and I did an outstanding piece, which took me months and months looking at all sorts of factors. But I can tell you for a fact that you're seeing it in the United States. You've seen it with the elections, and you've seen it with Trump commenting about it over and over, that the amount that the corruption is now becoming more and more visible, and it's shocking people. And boxing is just a microcosm of what the problem is on a macroeconomic, on a nationwide level. It
Yeah.
is so bad over there. And the project that I talk about later on about money and what goes on, and you can just tie to it in terms of boxing as well, because it's all trickle down effects from what happens on the national level to what happens in sport as well. So it is man, why are we doing a podcast? Sometimes I wonder, but it is disgusting, man. It is filth. We're gonna have to do a piece on that later on. But anyway, so that was the news about a fight that has just recently been made official. Anything more in terms of news or fights or what's forthcoming next week? I haven't had
Yes,
an
we
opportunity
almost,
to look at the schedule.
yes, we almost forgot it because the next Saturday there's Earl Spence facing Danny Jacob. Sorry, Danny Garcia.
Okay. So the PBC trying to squeeze more money from an already financially depleted country. What is it? 74.99. Wow, this is just boxing fans are just getting financially raped at the moment. It is, and these people, that the gullibility of these guys that are still paying these, just to think that they're supporting boxing. You fucking idiots, man. Oh, we
Yeah,
got to support box. You don't even understand anything about the creation of money, the distribution of income, and where these guys. Oh man, the level of stupidity that I hear is just shocking, man. I'm gonna have to educate these idiots about the creation of money very soon. I'm gonna do it next week here on the show, a little half-hour special, man, just to educate these people what the fuck what is going on in society. But in any case, official, Spence and Garcia, to me, Spence fighting, a PBC fighter, a guy who's former world champion, former unified 140-pound champion, but one of the beloved sons of that transsexual lover Al Heyman. And I'm not being facetious there. You can just, if you look at
yeah,
the internet carefully, you'll find all about the videos in circulation that they've been buying back with Al Heyman's sexual indiscretions. I've got nothing against the guy. That's his proclivity. Fair enough. Not for me, I'm afraid. But anyway, um, Errol Spence off his car crash, and I haven't even seen that, and the way Fox Sports, I remember somebody speaking about it. Have you seen the way official that they did? They've edited the whole crash. They've put in new cadence signals. They've EQ'd the crash to almost make it like a they've changed the whole sound acoustics to almost make it like a standout event. Is pathetic, man. How they're trying to profit off this car crash that was caught on CCTV, and they've just given it a complete video and sound enhancement, man. It is just
I
this.
didn't know about it. I wasn't
Uh,
following. So they are really doing that,
yeah,
playing that
yeah.
video so hard.
They're trying to make it into some Knight Rider shit. It's hilarious. But for me, um, okay, certain boxing fans have got a little bit of intrigue about what is the condition of Spence post surgery. From what I understand, it's pretty extensive surgery when he's gone for surgical implants. So there are, from my understanding, that they're having to fix these into the skull itself, the top and the bottom. So that's pretty major surgery with steel screws. So that's the only way that he's been able to, you know, chew down meals once more. Um, so, um, his his weight, he's had sufficient time to train as well. So his conditioning, from what I'm hearing, is looking pretty good. His check weights, 20-day check weights, etc., have been all into the proximity because he's a big guy. But the thing I can't stand with Errol Spence is that he's very quick to make the demarcation that other fighters like Crawford is on the wrong side of the fence. But all Errol Spence is obsessed about is fighters like Canelo, and he's made videos talking about how he's trying to talk about how him and Canelo are the same size. I'm just as big as Canelo. He just has an obsession with fighting Canelo. And correct me if I'm not wrong, but Canelo is also on the other side of the street as well. So there's no standards, no ethics to what these guys are saying. Errol Spence, for me, is one of those other fighters that you can make the argument that maybe the PBC are matching up correctly, but I don't think so. I think he's money orientated, and the fact that he fought Mikey Garcia, I think, clearly accentuates that, because that is not a legacy fight from any critical boxing analyst. Sorry, don't give me that shit, man. Mikey Garcia's pound for pound, so it's a legitimate fight. Get the fuck out of here, man. You're bringing up a 126-pound fighter at 147, who is a financial mercenary anyway, has a name, and Al Heyman is clearly trying to make a new composition of a pay-per-view star in Errol Spence. So you put that fight on pay-per-view, and the whole objective is for Errol Spence to absorb Mikey Garcia's whatever pure Mexican or Sudai Mexican American fans. That's what he was all about. Mikey gets a tremendous payday, and so does Errol. And had nothing more than that. That was just a money fight to get Errol Spence into an A-side position if there was ever a fight between him and Crawford. So they can clearly negotiate the terms, and he'll get a bigger split as well. So that was a Floyd Money Mayweather move, and Errol is one of his advocates. We know that, Errol. So something has gone down the line with Errol and even Crawford, because both of them went overseas and both of them won their maiden world championship overseas. So clearly the hunger and the desire was there for both of them. But both Errol and Terence Crawford, both of them are complicit. Crawford has been more than comfortable banking, 54 million for a fight whatsoever. And only now he starts complaining, the official, when he's coming to the end of his contract, whatever, he starts complaining now. But, you don't hear anything beforehand as well. So it's not like they don't understand terms, agreements of contracts, or they don't have lawyers looking over their contracts. So I don't buy any of this bullshit from both fighters. As far as I'm concerned, they're both B-level brawlers, both of them. Spence has been very fortunate in fights as well. The way he took out his IBF mandatory with 4 low blows, the Mexican cat, whatever his name was, he gets away with murder in pretty much all of his fights. A prodigious low blow. He loves to hold behind the head and punch. He gets away with murder, and Al Heyman will give him all the protection that he wants under the PBC banner, because he's the big dog for them. He's the unified champion. And Danny Garcia, come on, man, look at his career. It's a shambles. I think that's a diabolical resume as well. Highly superficial. He might have a good chin, but for me, what has happened to his boxing ability? He doesn't throw this. There's not the same conviction in the way he throws his punches now as well. Not a high work rate. Quite a sturdy 147 pounder, but the power is not translated from what it was at 140 pounds. And when you're gifted a world title fighting against Robert Guerrera, a guy who was a very good lightweight, and that's it, and he just jumped from 135 to 147, these are all gifted and protected and financially rewarded fighters, man. So official, me, I couldn't really give 2 fucks about that fight personally.
Me neither. Look, we are talking about Danny Garcia, whose 147 career, or his whole career, in fact, his whole legacy is about being able to take a punch. That's all. And beating Lucas Matisse 7, 8 years ago, something like that. Uh, yeah, and Earl Spence. Okay, you already talked about him name dropping Canelo, but people tend to forget that we are talking about the same guy who used to say the same things, to name call Miguel Cotto 5, 6 years ago,
Yes.
something like that. He was talking about him like he was about to fight him, like he was chasing that fight, and it was just hype, you know, the usual. Just the same tactics that most of the PBC Al Heyman guys use, so nothing new. Spence continues to to just talk without backing it up. Yeah, I mean, look, let's say no. First of all, I'll listen like this. The only thing that I'm interested about this fight is how is Errol Spence going to look? How good is he going to be able to take a punch compared to before his car accident? But that's really the only thing that I'm interested about when it comes to this fight. I cannot care less about the fight and how it goes. Um, if it was a pre-crash accident, Errol Spence, no one would be interested into it. Perhaps the most of us would probably expect the fight to go the same way, pretty much the same way as it went in between Spence and Mikey Garcia. And similar to Mikey, Dan is another guy who's not a big welterweight, fighting a weight bully. Uh, Another guy who would be stationary. Uh, Me, but you know what? What was interesting in his fight against Mikey Garcia is that most of the people missed it, but Mikey in fact shook Earl Spence, put him on a wobbly legs in the fifth round with the counter left hook. So it would be interesting to see if Danny Garcia would be able to catch him. But again, if it was Danny Garcia from a year or two ago, because not only Spence but Danny Garcia isn't looking good neither. His very last fight against Redcatch was embarrassing. His performance was embarrassing. Um, I was wondering, was Danny Garcia that shot, because he was looking so shot in that fight. So I was wondering if he was really that shot, or if he was maybe a friend with Ratcatch and he was carrying him. And I also had got the impression watching his fight against Ratcatch that he was simply carrying Ratcatch. That he could have stopped him anytime he wanted, but he just chose not to. Um, a proof for it, maybe the way he reacted to Redcatch biting him on the shoulder. I mean, even Redcatch, after doing so, he was laughing. I think Garcia too was probably laughing. I'm not sure, cannot remember. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not interested because okay, I have a problem. I have to restart my PC. Uh, but what I'm trying to say is, this is not only the question of how Errol Spence is going to look but also how Dan is going to look, being that he was looking terrible in the last fight. And this fight maybe doesn't tell us anything about Errol Spence and his current shape, because he maybe he may be a diminished fighter after surviving a car crash, but maybe doesn't show up just because Danny Garcia is probably shot too, at least judging by his last fight.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's a smart move from PBC, because uh, they're putting him against Danny Garcia, who's known for having a granite chain, iron chain, could can take a punch, is durable, and has a very good left hook. But no one wants, or none of them wants to remind you of how terrible he was looking against Red Catch. So we maybe we'll have to wait for another fight to really see has has a car crash had any negative effect on Spence.
Because Garcia, you've got a southpaw and you've got an orthodox fighter. Spence is obviously far more volume than Danny Garcia. Garcia likes to operate at that mid-range and likes to hook from sort of mid-range. Once upon a time, he had a good straight right hand, but he doesn't throw it with the same sort of conviction, and from what I've seen, and it was non-existent in the Red Catch fight. There was a little bit of it, flashes of it in the Granadas fight, but Granadas has been he's a battle down warrior from a sort of 140 pounds as well. So it doesn't have no power. It didn't really pose Garcia much damage. With a good chin he has, so you can just sort of walk him down and just manhandle him and just knock him out with his much bigger frame size and power as well. That's the only redemption Danny gets in the sense that the Ivan Redcatch fight was an embarrassment, and it definitely lowered the credibility and certainly his marketability as well, from what I'm concerned. So I think Al Heyman has done a risk assessment, and I think Al Heyman has clearly gauged that Danny Garcia is way past his best. He's not getting any better. He's fat and comfortable now. It's all about the paydays for him, and a washed down Danny Garcia doesn't pose a significant threat to an Errol Spence, who there is question marks about his physical well-being and his ability to take punches post-surgery. But if there was vulnerabilities in Errol doing that, then this fight would not have happened. I think Errol and his trainer made that assessment after surgery, and they started training and some heavy sparring sessions, and Errol was able to take the punches. I think then clearly they wanted a notable PBC name that'll get him out on. And to be fair, he's not fighting an absolute bum, so you got to give him some credit. It is a name. It is a former world champion,
Sure,
who's taken Keith Thurman to points, and Sean Porter has only suffered 2 split decision losses, and some people argue that he won both of those fights. So a reasonably good name. But as we mentioned, a fighter whose best performances was a number of years ago, and that's, for me, the key components. You've got to look at the momentum coming into the fight, and Danny Garcia's momentum is terrible. Errol Spence's momentum is better, but he's had very fortunate decisions as well in between some of the fights. But he's with the Sean Porter fight, but he did show good fight and dog in the fight, because he was getting subjugated the first 6 and he was coming back as well. But as I mentioned, it all stems from the number of low blows. That's what softens Sean Porter up to allow for the second half uprising from Spence. If I keep low blowing you 40 times, that pain does not dissipate within 36 minutes. Go and speak to any medical professional and they will give you that answer. That is a lingering pain that remains with you, and you do not know what happens to the organs, etc. The actual damage which starts manifesting after, man. So those punches, the body, those punch to call them flash knockdowns or whatever, you got no idea about the composition of the human body and how it works. That's why those punches are illegal, because of the damage they do. So if I keep hitting you in an illegal spot all those times, what the fuck do you think it's going to do to you? Just apply the simple logic, people. A punch at the back of the head can kill you. You've got to look at the way the brain, the connection, the way it's connected to your nervous system, etc. That those blows can kill you. That's why rabbit punching is illegal as well, and punches to the kidney as well. So if somebody's keep infringing those rules and regulations by, and you've got a referee who's clearly, he's clearly prone to giving him a pass on all of those, man, not even warning him or whatever, or deducting any points, because it's all about screwing. It's all about protecting this guy. Then why the fuck do you think I want to watch that fight? And why the fuck do you think I want to watch any more of those fights on that same network with the same protected and insulated fighter, man? It is bullshit, man. So that's the reason why I'm a little bit disillusioned by this fight, because I think we're going to get the same outcome. Errol Spence wins this fight. Whether he wins it by knockout or in points, my guess is probably on points. That's what I think will happen. And what happens after, boxing fans, they've got no more equity with this marination that is going on. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in the same predicament as watching Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. We're going to see this with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, 55-year-olds fighting in 2048 or whatever, man. The long lost unification that never happened with these old fucking washed up has-beens, man. That's what's going to happen. The WBC is creating that avenue for these fighters to come back with this bullshit exhibition sponsoring what they're doing. So
Terrible.
Yeah, don't be surprised, man, if we see him coming back with walking sticks and Zimmer frames, and man, this is boxing for you now, man. It's a sad sight, man.
Yeah. Triple JJJ in the chat room called Errol Spent. What else I wanted to add is, let's just imagine corruption that Errol Spence stops Danny Garcia. People would be saying, "Oh, it's impressive." Either it's impressive from Errol Spence, or that he came back even stronger after the accident, while they're forgetting how terrible Danny Garcia is looking. I think that all lights are on Spence and his car accident, and even all the boxing fans are also only watching towards Earl Spence, analyzing him before and after the accident, trying to gauge what kind of fighting shape he's at. But still, once more, they're completely forgetting how bad Danny Garcia was looking. So let's say that Errol Spence stops Danny Garcia the next week. To me, it still won't say anything about Errol Spence or how good he is. To me, if that happens, it's only gonna be the case of people, of everybody but us, overlooking and easily forgetting how terrible Danny Garcia was looking in his last fight and overlooking that while they were concentrating on Errol Spence and his car accident, overlooking the fact that Danny Garcia may already be shot by the time he found himself in the ring with Errol. Now, of course, some PBC fanboys are gonna say that I'm creating the excuses in advance. No, it's just a pure logic, and props for PBC. That's something that's very smart. And as you said it yourself, corruption. He's not fighting a complete bum. He's fighting a guy who used to be fairly respected fighter who could take a punch and be in the ring with the other top welterweight names. But and if that stoppage happens in Spence's favor, uh, it's gonna only propel him even more, and you'll get even more people talking about Crawford not standing a chance against him. Now, I can certainly make a case uh, for Spence winning the potential Crawford fight, which would never happen, by the way, like you said. But that if the result of this fight is such that Errol stops him, trust me that everybody is gonna talk about Spence coming back being great and
Yeah,
Crawford not being on his level. That's it.
I would. Official, I wouldn't be surprised if Danny Garcia took a dive in this fight. Somehow they contrived to give Errol a knockout victory, the first of Danny Garcia's career,
Yeah.
because he's clearly a spare tire for Al Heyman now. It's you just give him a little payday, his father can get a bit of heroin, etc. So um, that is just a shambolic, to watch this guy and his father, man. What you know, a Puerto Rican, he doesn't know anything about Puerto Rican roots. Can he even speak Spanish, this kid, man? He's just an embarrassment, man. What the fuck are people watching with this fool? Um, his ability to make records, should we talk about that? Some of the most diabolical stuff that you'll ever hear. I mean, I wouldn't even play that when my dog's taking a shit because that would give him constipation, you
A
know.
very talented, musically talented family. His sister
Man,
too.
and people can say, "What do you know about music?" But official knows about my history in that area, and don't even want to test me in that, man, because that's my sector. There, few people. Um, I know how to make records from scratch using old analog equipment going back in the 80s, man, and I've done that in the past. So don't even get me started on music because it's a battle you will never ever win. No one's got a record collection anywhere near as close as mine, man. No one. But that's something for another day. Anyway, official, enough of that fight. I'm going for Errol Spence, whatever, man. I don't really give a fuck. I don't think there's anything on the undercard. I think there's Sebastian Pandora, some guys as tall as a giraffe fighting in the weight category that he shouldn't be. I don't know whether there's what's happening with. I think Nordino Bali's out of the WBC fight, and I think it might be Emmanuel Rodriguez and Nanita Donaire now. I don't know whether that's going to happen on a PBC card, but that's a fight I like. I don't know whether you heard about that, but I think it's going to be Rodriguez and Donaire now, and then the winner fights a Bali later on or something. I think they're giving him a champion in recess, but I'm not sure whether it's happening on this card. I got no idea, but that's a sort of a.
Yeah. In fact, I heard that Rodriguez is going to replace Ubali against Donaire, but I know that it was supposed to be a separate card. Donaire Ubali fight was supposed to be a main event. on another PBC card, so it was not
Yeah.
supposed to be on the other cards. But let me see. I'm currently on Spence's box rack. Let me see the event. Yeah, so beside the main event, there is Sebastian Fondora against Jorge Cota, Julio Ceja versus Eduardo Ramirez, Francisco Santana, Josecito, Miguel Lopez fighting somebody.
Mm. Josecito
No, no,
Lopez.
yeah, huh? Yeah,
Josecito Lopez
Josecito.
and Santana. That's going to be a fan-friendly fight. That's Santana is completely washed up now, and Lopez, I've always had respect for. Good fighter. The way Canelo fucked him over was disgusting, man. You bring him up to 140, gets a victory from 140 to 147, and then you don't fight him at 147, you drag him up to 154. That's
Yeah.
Canelo Alvarez there for you people. You know, your tongues are still up his ass, so what the fuck do you know, man?
Oh man! I really need to make that compilation of your of, of you going into abyss mode when you start insulting the fighters. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, well, I don't know, James. I don't know. I mean, I know what you're saying about the power, but Emmanuel Rodriguez is a fight I really like, technically as well, because he doesn't have to move around the ring to find his distance and range. He finds that very quickly. He's just got that ability to find that sort of range. Not blessed. He almost has that lazy, lethargic style, man. But he's a beautiful boxer to watch. Whether he gets knocked out or what, I just like seeing him in the ring because I'm a little bit worried about his killer instinct at times. He just goes into some sort of cruise control one. But when you watch a fighter throw a punch and a hard punch with minimal effort, that's Emmanuel Rodriguez. Just watch the way he fires, that left hook, the right hand, it's for me it's just from a sort of an artistic and even a um, just looking at technical boxing and against Doneri, you've also got another technician as well. So that is a great fight, and I'm not sure whether it's a foregone conclusion that Donaire knocks him out. Maybe. I mean, Donaire, Rodriguez got obliterated by Inoue, but they were both firing sort of simultaneous sort of left hooks in that one, and Inoue, and that's when Rodriguez was a little bit more vulnerable because you're going to get caught with that counter because his left hand was way up in the air in that one. But so we don't know it about Nonito as well in terms of what is his ability and his punch resistance is like after that 12-round magnificent fight of the year, one of the greatest fights in the number of years. So far he's not showed that degradation in his punch resistance. And he's a warrior, an all-time great. I love Nonito Donaire, but for
Oh,
me,
yeah.
I'm I hear what you're saying, James, and it's a logical assumption to make, and I guess that's the prognostication that a lot of fight fans are having. But I'm not too sure. I've got to look at Donaire's training videos. I've got to see what sort of condition is where his weight is ballooned up a lot and he's cutting a lot of weight to come back down. I've got to look at those factors, but we'll get into this fight and official and myself will get into some real deep technical talk about the fight build up. We'll try and monitor that as well because that's a real. I don't know about you, official. I'm sure you as well, but that's a real good fight. I'm looking forward to.
Me too. In fact, I was just about to tell you that a couple of days ago, I
Yeah.
downloaded, or no, I haven't downloaded it yet, but I was about to, Rodriguez's fight against Maloney. I wanted to watch it as well as his other fights, and I'm very interested into that fight as well as you. Now it's how do you say? I'm very interested into some things that Donaire said. In fact, he said that he's in one of the recent interviews on boxing scene a couple of months ago, probably just a few months ago, not a very long time ago, that he's staying on in shape all the time. That his weight is very low. In fact, now I don't know how honest he was being or how true is it, but he was saying that he could easily drop to 115, and that he was mentioning he would love to fight Chocolatito at that weight. So I don't
It's
know how
crazy.
true. Yeah, I don't know how true is it, because we know that Donaire used to, especially before, he used to balloon up in weight in between the fights, and he was one of those who was draining himself in order to stay at weight. So I, I'm just wondering how true is it. But at least that's what Tunito said, that he's staying in shape all the time for the first time in his career, something like that, I think. So
The way if Rodriguez is going to win this fight, he's going to have to target the body and just overload the body from round one. That's going to be his only way. That's the only
yeah.
way he's going to break down Donaire. And if he's going to accrue, if he's going to get a win by him, it's just highly inconceivable. I know, but you never know when. Donaire definitely has vulnerabilities to the body. He's been hurt multiple times to the body, even in the past as well. And Inoue did that as well. Should have got a knockout victory over Donaire. The referee
Yes.
body checked Inoue. Go and watch that fight, and there was clearly more than 10 seconds in the time it took for him to go down and get up. And um, Rodriguez has got the ability to work that body, but that's what he's going to have to do. He's got no choice. And if he finds his distance and his range, and he has a sixth sense of doing that, then that's what he's got to work out. And I agree, it's going to be difficult by headshots to even get a points decision victory. Donaire is probably going to even outwork him as well. Rodriguez is not a big power. He's not prodigious in terms of his volume. That's not his style. He's about punch placement, countering. He's a counter puncher. It's about um, not it's not volume. It's precision and timing and accuracy. So, but he's not tremendously heavy-handed. Yeah, I agree, absolutely. But he does have the ability to work the body, and he's got to do that. It's just simple. That's his way to victory, and we'll see whether it factors in later on. But that's a great fight, and I'm sure we'll be interacting on that one later on. Um, there's nothing else for me official on that PBC card. Any other fights on any other networks next week?
Yeah, hold on, let me see it. Let me check the schedule. Yeah, by the way, the fight between Rodriguez and Donaire is happening on the 19th of December. But
Great.
okay, let's see what else is there next week. Um, MTK
Because
Global.
officially it looks like our favorite Filipino, John Riel Casimiro. I've just got the feeling he's going to fight Guillermo Rigondeaux in some sort of
Yeah,
yeah. That's
yes.
I could be wrong, but that's the impression I'm getting. He's going to go up in weight and fight Rigondeaux.
Yeah, but I mean, look, it's for sure. I'm gonna be watching that fight for sure, and
Yeah,
I even kind of like it, but it's a down step from the fight that he was supposed to take and that he ducked. And yeah, he's another one. Unfortunately, now it's happening even with the bantamweights. Being on the typical PBC diet. Um,
yeah.
just Errol Spence opening his mouth too much, talking too much, and then showing you much less, you know. So it's a very good fight. I mean, it depends, being that Rigo is very old and past it. I'm even wondering how really good of a fight it is. Not a bad fight for sure, it's certain, but not the one that we were expecting to see, and that's why I'm disappointed. Um, yeah, but
Mm,
anyway,
absolutely.
December the 2nd, okay, Jazz Dickinson, Ram Walsh, Bolotniks, and Serge Michael. Yeah, the next Friday, Billy Joe Saunders is waking Martin Murray from the dead,
Cryogenically releasing him in the
resurrecting,
freezer. Oh my god.
resurrecting Murray. Then on Saturday, I think, yeah, Yard is coming back against Lyndon Arthur, uh, and that's it. That's it. We already
Okay.
mentioned the Spence card.
Mm, okay. Not a not a tremendous amount of fights. But yeah, the Anthony Yard fight, that's it, Lyndon Arthur, that should be that'll be a decent fight to watch as well, and for us as well, officially, it'll be a great time.
Yeah,
None of this fucking 4 o'clock of nonsense. Um,
yeah.
where's which
It's on BT Sport.
yeah, I wonder which where's it taking? That's going to be in London alone. Is that correct?
Yeah, at Royal Albert Hall.
Ah, nice. And that was the thing with the Royal. I mean, I know the Royal Albert Hall with it, and that was the problem that they only have a license up until 12 o'clock, and I think that might have been the problem as to why the Tyson Fury and the Ajit Kabahel fight might have broken down because the ESPN wanted the fight to commence after 12 p.m. Greenwich um, Meridian time,
Yeah,
but the Royal Albert Hall doesn't have a license that can. They have to get special dispensation from um, um, whichever council is overseeing that jurisdiction. So it's possible, but it would have been difficult. So that's the reason that they're stipulating. But it may be more due to the arbitration that is going on with Wilder as well. So that it's an interesting one. They might have just used that as a
yeah,
scapegoat to delay the fight. But I don't give a fuck about that anyway, man. You know, Wilder. People are just scamming Deontay Wilder, man. You know, a dispute resolution. What they're gonna do? You know, if there's no veracity in the contract, and you've got Harvard lawyers going over the contract, then what's an ombudsman service going to do? You know, in terms of what they're going to do, they're going to resurrect a contract that the terms and agreements have expired, and there's no recourse to a third match then unless a new contract is drawn up. So man,
yeah.
man, these people don't understand contract. They never even signed a working contract in their life, man. Yeah,
Uh,
they don't know fuck all, man.
the only other explanation, in my opinion, would be if they already secretly agreed on a third fight, and maybe they're maybe doing this just in
Yeah,
order to hype it up.
that's
But
it.
possible, but I personally doubt it. I
That
really think
that is
it.
disgusting. And official, this is what we were saying about Tyson Fury before. He is not an honest or legitimate character, man. He's made up so much shit his
Oh,
entire life under this Christian sanctimonious pretense, man. Go and speak to his wife what he was doing when he had all of the money, man. He was away for 3, 4 weeks out partying, drinking. It's got nothing to do with mental health, some sort of brain injury, man. Man, the gullibility of these people is just extraordinary, man. He's got
yeah.
no morals. Go and listen to what his wife was saying, man. You know, look at the way he flirts with women on camera, whatever, man. That's just a, a disgusting thing, man. When I see that, it sickens me. And when you see people like, Alexander Usyk, who are very heavily, man of religion and faith, it plays such an important part of his life. You don't see any of that shenanigans out there. And when you
Yes.
see Usyk, the way he was sparring with Dave Allen, and he, I don't know whether you saw the sparring footage, official, when he
Yeah,
basically
exactly.
knocked out Dave Allen on his feet. What did he do? He's he propped the guy from falling down, man. He stopped and went straight over to him, realized the guy was hurt badly, man. That's the way you're supposed to conduct yourself, in and out of
Absolutely.
the ring, man. That's what I respect personally, man. Um, you're comparing completely different characters, born and raised, man. It's just, for me, man. I want to see Usyk, and I want to see him. I want to see Usyk dethrone Fury. That's the fight for me, man. Not interested in anything else, man. And it's interesting that James Ali Bashir, who people think might have some sort of animosity against Usyk because he was unceremoniously swept aside in favor of Yuri Shevchenko and the rest of the camp. But he harbors no ill will or criticism, and it's funny that official that James Ali Bashir believes that Tyson Fury is actually a far easier fight for Usyk than, say, a Joshua or a Wilder. And he's a man who knows what he's talking about. I'm not saying that is, but he's looked at all of those fights way before, and he's one of the best trainers there is around, as far as I'm concerned. He knows what he's worked with heavyweights his entire life, and that was his views. So, you know,
Yes, I mean, I would not be surprised neither. Um, in some way, it makes sense, especially when you see how bad Fury looks against some of those shorter, smaller fighters. It makes sense. Plus, add to it the boxing talent and the physical abilities that Usyk possess. Very possible, man. And yeah, I mean, speaking of Tyson Fury, I I even told to other people about, even during the build up of Wilder fight, first or the second or even the first Wilder fight, I was mentioning some things as well about him not being honest, being a great showman, and he's amazing at promoting himself, but far away from being honest. Um, I mean, many things that he was saying about, even about Joshua, AJ, or Wilder in the build up of the first two fights. I mean, like. I, I cannot exactly remember, but I know that there are many, not that important to me, but clear indications to me of how great that guy is at promoting himself and hyping himself up, but also at lying, and he's changing his tune from fight to fight to how it in a way, so it works in a
yes.
best way for him in his favor. But
I'll tell you, official. I mean, I'm not a mental health expert, but I've spoken. I know people who have suffered it, and I've spoken with a lot of individuals and done a lot of research, and I've looked at the precipitating factors and when it manifests, and I can tell you that the propensity of mental health to manifest when a fighter has just realized, has fulfilled his goals. He's all his life he's wanted to be the world heavyweight champion, and when he achieves it, he climbs the top of the mountain. And we know with money as well, the biggest problem about not having money is worrying about not having money, and that's a massive burden that causes all of these problems for people. So when you find yourself in the position where you've achieved your goals, you've made an astronomical amount of money, you can support all of your family. I'm sorry, that does not cause mental illness. I'm sorry, it's the complete opposite. Go and look at the statistics of people who they've had factors of depression, loneliness, unemployment, all of those factors abusing their body. all of those symptoms have subsequently culminated into, it's not the opposite, people. It's not when you've made it, you've achieved success. It does happen as well, but go and look at the statistics that I'm sorry, I don't buy that 1 second whatsoever. And the fact that Tyson Fury, in all of his earlier, go and look at his earlier videos after fights, he never, he explicitly said he's got no mental problems, he's never had depression and all of this. And then suddenly when he's got it later on, he talks about how he's had it all his life, man. Sorry, that's a complete contradiction of what you were saying before. I don't subscribe to that nonsense. That was all about, the British Boxing Board of Control and UCAD it, and the way they retrospectively and discreetly and whatever, they didn't follow any of WADA, the World Anti-Doping Authority, who UCAD is an affiliate of, so they have to follow their rules, and they never publish their prohibited list. They never release case notes. The way they adjudicated on that whole Nandrolin was shocking, and that's what this whole Trojan horse was about. So they just backdated the ban discreetly, sort of, no one would even notice whatever, or even question the samples, whatever. So that was what we were talking about in terms of the protection and insulation and Tyson Fury has received throughout his career. It's shocking, but people seem to think that he is this Mr. Air invincible and he's the best defensive master, whatever, man. But a fighter who gets outboxed, he gets knocked down by pretty much everybody. He gets protected by referees. Even Deontay Wilder, a complete bum, almost knocks him out, knocks him down twice. So, it's that same Muhammad Ali effect. I am the greatest. He advocated that, said nothing but that, and it's subliminally that it hypnotizes all of the journalists, whatever, because they've never seen a brash and character like that. So they all run that story, and everybody believes it. And you get that with Tyson Fury to a certain degree. I know a little bit of a microcosm, but he does the same thing. I'm the greatest, whatever, since Muhammad Ali, or even better than him. But it's just all bullshit, people. Don't be fooled by the 6'9" size, man. That guy can get beaten up. I've seen it. John McDermott already did it. He has already shown you how to beat Tyson Fury, but they couldn't have that defeat, and his promoters got him a rematch straight away. So that's we'll cover that another day. But anyway, official, that's pretty much it from myself. I don't know if there's any other points you want to make.
Just one quick point. I want to address the comment in a comment section from James Thornton when we were listing the fights coming up. He mentioned Ioka and Tanaka on 31st December. James, don't worry about that fight. We are surely going to cover it, but I use this opportunity to mention that I already started doing the film study on that fight. So Corruption and myself, well, we'll have to decide exactly how are we going to do it, but we can easily start doing, Corruption. We may start doing, and we already spoke about this. So we are probably going to start doing the breakdowns either on the show or uploading separate videos very often from now on, including Ioka and Tanaka. So I don't know, we haven't really clarified it yet. How are we going to proceed exactly? We may do both on the show, take a part of the show and use it for the breakdowns of a fighter or two. So we may, and look, when it comes to Ioka and Tanaka, or any other fight that
from
really
Japan, that's our speciality.
Yeah.
I was doing live stream on these fighters when Kosei was fighting for his world championship. So me and Nato, we covered him and Moses Fuentes live as well from Japan when he won his second title. So yeah, I covered Iyoko and Hernandez, and when he unified at minimum weight, I was on the live stream from Japan. So yeah, we know these fighters, intimately better than 99% of the YouTube community. So don't worry about that. We're just going to find the best medium for presenting our analysis. It might be in short, compact videos as a separate project, or it may be within a live stream, depending what is easier for people to access. But I don't know. Official and Mal will decide on that in due course. But yeah, there's going to be some great stuff coming up. Deficiencies, advantages, etc. All sorts of craft previous fights. There's going to be an autopsy on those two guys, ultimately
Yeah,
leading to a prediction on that before. But we're going to cover the entire cards in Japan. Hashi, Tekken Promotions. It should be two cards over 2 days. I hope they're still maintaining that. That's what the early indication was. So we'll do that.
yeah, exactly. And so, what I also wanted to say about this fight between Yok and Tanaka, as well as about any other fight that really catches our interest, we could even, just like you said, we could go on and do it. Do the breakdowns about them. It can possibly get extend. How do you say? We are not obligated to do the breakdowns on only one show. We may start doing them, we may do a couple of breakdowns on a couple of shows about that particular fight, because there's a lot to talk about. The last night, indeed, I was doing my film study on Kosei Tanaka's fight against Ryochi Taguchi. And so that fight was so interesting to me that only in the first 3-4 rounds I already had gathered enough of material for for an hour long film study, from only the first 3 or 4 rounds. So yeah, corruption, what I'm trying to say is possibly it may our breakdown series on Ioka Tanaka may get very long, but
Yeah,
it's
because
better for the
the
viewers.
fights we want to focus in on, see, Kosei before was he didn't have the boxing ability very on, and he was very much relying on his power to get him out of fights, and to win. Certainly, when he won his first world title as well, the power came to the rescue. So we'll talk about the progression of his boxing ability, because he's 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 the guy who literally carries the heart on his sleeve. So it's that warrior mentality. That's that's the advantage I think he's going to have. I think when it goes down to the trench, when it's like a trench warfare, this guy is going to be tough, because he's fought with broken limbs, broken eye sockets in the ring as well, against murderous punches. So this guy is a warrior, in the true sort of embodiment of the word. And we'll try and factor that, and look at that, and the true sort of technical ability of, say, an Ioka, with the ability he has, like fighting at sort of different sort of ranges, and in his work rate and activity, and his counter punching as well. So there's so many fights to look at with Kosei, and even with Yoka, because you've got to go back to minimum weight, uh, light flyweight, and then he's not had a lot of fights at super flyweight. So we'll tend to focus on, certainly I want to look at Ioka at sort of minimum weight when he was unifying titles as well, because I think he was brilliant back then. So yeah, we'll have to try and find a nice medium of not sort of elongating it too much, but just get short pertinent points. But it's a learning process for us as well, in trying to find a good balance. don't want to make the podcast too long where people are not absorbing the stuff, and certainly we did that with the Gennady Golovkin breakdowns as well, which I think it's such an underrated portion, but somehow people may have got a little bit uh, they got too subjugated by all of our vocal analysis before, and they may just not have seen that. So that's why we try and do those markers at the bottom so people can just focus on the specific areas. So it's a case of using either those markers and separating it, or we'll just do them as fresh, separate videos, then that might get maximum attention on them. So we'll try and come up with a balance on that.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better.
Okay. And I think that'll be it for this Sunday evening. And want to thank everybody who joined us for the live YouTube broadcast of the podcast, and to all the new people who joined us as well, and a lot of great comments and sort of recommendations on fights and fighters. So I want to thank everybody, IBT Boxing, Alone, El Dog who joined us earlier, Shepherd of Sons, Triple J, great comments from James Fulton. We'll definitely be speaking a lot more about those fights in due course. And yeah, we like this interaction with you guys as well. Who else did we have? Nick Hamer is always giving a shout out to Official, one of your soldiers. Matisse, big shout out to you as well. Philo Brand. Who else? Wolves. Never seen him before.
Me neither.
Yeah. Big up to you as well, my friend. And to anybody else, apologies. No discourtesy if I've forgotten anybody, but all of the usual cats. Shout out to everybody across the whole YouTube boxing community as well. Everybody's trying to do their thing as well. Can get a little bit overcritical about their content, but nah. Anyway, that'll be it for myself. Big up to everybody, and we'll be back this time. Hopefully, we'll get the time schedule a bit back to the normal hours as well. It's just been a little bit difficult. Lots going on with Official on his end as well, and I've just come back into the country as well. I've had a period away as well, so we'll try and get back into a bit of normality with the schedule. Hopefully, we'll try and stick to the 9 p.m. Central European time as well, because that's probably going to be the better way of just keeping all of the subscribers and just so people know in advance as well. So, Official.
Yeah, so thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Corruption, for this opportunity, for another opportunity to talk about boxing. I missed it after missing the last, not being able to do the last show. So see you later, guys. See you the next time, the next Sunday, and thank you, everybody. Peace out.
Sayonara.